on imports of, say, things like solar panels from other countries. Is that a worry to you in terms of, longer term down the road? Could less competition at home in the US mean that less people have solar as an option, for example?
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that you want to encourage as many people to use renewable energy as possible, and if the price goes up, that makes it more difficult. But where I do have sympathy with Donald Trump is in the idea that trade barriers are sometimes necessary. And I know for most people watching that seems a very strange thing to say. But if you look at what's been happening in the last few years, we've had a number of wrong ideas about economics and about the economic system. We think that it reduces inequality, whereas in fact it achieves the opposite. We think that it creates jobs, and it often does not. We think that it reduces poverty, and often it doesn't do that either. But this idea that free trade helps everybody rise up is fundamentally flawed. If you look at many of the developing countries of the world, they're encouraged to open their markets, they let in all the big Western corporations, and they sell their natural resources. But these countries, they cannot develop any advanced industrial systems themselves, and so they're left simply as places to supply resources. They can't build an economic system of their own. And so for many in developing countries, free trade is a disadvantage. And I think we need to rethink trade. We need to move the balance back into something which is actually of a benefit to society and not just to big corporations.
So, Graham, are you perhaps saying that by restricting some trade, you're helping countries to help themselves and be more innovative and self-sustainable, maybe? Exactly.
I mean, countries like Indonesia, if all they can do is sell their coal and raw materials and rubber, they can never start manufacturing automotive, cars or airplanes, because they can never develop economies of scale. I mean, what's happened in places like China or Japan or South Korea or Taiwan is that they kept the doors closed while they developed the scale and developed the technology, and then they became more open to trade. And I think we need to be more realistic if we're to actually help the poor world grow.
There's a new deputy in town at the European Central Bank. Spanish Economics Minister Luis de Guindos will soon be the next vice president of the ECB. But does this signal a new direction, or will it be business as usual? Like a good TV drama, the No-Billag initiative is gripping Switzerland. On March 4th, it's the series final, with people voting on whether to switch off public service broadcast funding for good. On The Big Picture tonight, we tune into the views of campaigners on both sides. Roger Schawinski is a media pioneer and author, and he told us the world is watching.
And it would be totally un-Swiss to do something so radical. And that's why really a lot of foreign stations, especially a television station in Germany, are watching what is happening. I'm giving interview in Germany all the time, and in Austria, and now here on this great channel. So really, this could be groundbreaking. And I'm sure a lot of people from the ultra-right in Germany and in other countries are waiting for yes, in this case, to say we want to do the same thing.
His work is on a vast scale, using powerful lights and intricate technology to project a message or story onto the likes of buildings and landscapes. Tonight, our newsmaker light artist, GERRY Hofstadter, lets us in on the detailed process behind his latest work to take the Swiss brand on a grand light tour of America, and where he gets the inspiration for his work.
I'm doing these light art projections for art or business or marketing, environmental, state ceremonies, whatever. And I discovered quite fast that these projections are so environmental friendly. It's just light for an hour or two and you go. You even don't touch the building. So the point is getting the creativity and the great know-how about history, human being and our planet. You combine these things. Then you can alert or highlight a situation.
Good evening. You're watching the Swiss Pulse. I'm Amanda King. This is The Living Markets. Good evening, I'm Amanda Kane. Before we take a look at what's happening in the markets, let's get up to speed with what's happening in the world. Export figures for Switzerland are down compared to last month, mainly due to weaker pharmaceutical exports. However, watch exports are back in line with expectations, according to the Federation of the Swiss Watch Industry. Swiss watch exports were up by 12.5% in January compared to last year. China climbed into second place, overtaking the US, where watch export numbers have declined over the past 2 years. Swiss consumers are buying more online. Figures reported on Tuesday show that e-commerce sales rose by 10% last year, taking it to a total of 8.6 billion francs. A key finding in the research presented by Swiss Post and the Association of E-commerce Traders is that 1.6 billion francs were spent online receiving goods from abroad, and that's a 23% increase from the year before. Europe's largest bank, HSBC, saw an increase in annual revenues and a 140% rise in reported profit before tax, due in part to growth in Asia. Despite the positive numbers, the bank's yearly report card missed the mark, according to some analysts. The numbers were also overshadowed, given that HSBC said it could face penalties in excess of $1.5 billion, stemming from investigations into claims that its Swiss private bank helped clients evade paying taxes. It's a mixed send-off for outgoing CEO Stuart Gulliver, who's seen by most as instrumental in turning around the bank during his 7-year reign. He said in a statement that HSBC had moved on from past mistakes. The man assigned to oversee the Justice Department's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 US election is taking a closer look at US President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. CNN has learned that questions are now being asked about Kushner's personal business dealings when he was a lead contact for foreign governments. Sources tell CNN that there's a specific interest in discussions Kushner had with potential Chinese and Qatari investors to secure money for one of his company's buildings facing financial troubles. It's not clear what's behind the sudden interest in the discussions. Venezuela launched the pre-sale of a new commodity-backed digital currency called Petro on Tuesday. The launch of the so-called cryptocurrency comes as Venezuela faces deepening economic and political crisis. According to the government, the Petro is backed by oil, gas, gold and diamonds and is meant to help overcome US and EU sanctions. The opposition-controlled National Assembly in Venezuela has opposed the idea of the Petro, labelling it illegal. The US also warned that buying the Petro could violate sanctions against Venezuela, which prohibit the purchase of newly issued Venezuelan debt. Now, they say every second counts, but at the Olympics, it's more like every hundredth of a second. And nowhere was that more evident than in the men's two-man bobsleigh, as Canada and Germany finished in a dead heat for first place. So Canada's Justin Cripps and Alexander Kopas and Germany's Francesco Friedrich and Torsten Margis all walk away with gold. CNN's Christina McFarlane caught up with the Canadian duo about their remarkable Olympic moment.
I think it'll leave a mark on history, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really cool, you know, it's just to have a race that's that tight in the first place on such a technical track. You know, it's coming down to the 100th for sure. Each run, and then, you know, to tie, it doesn't get much more exciting than that, and you get to have an extra 2 guys who are as excited as you are, because you all won, you became Olympic champions. And when I found out we tied, it was Torsten Margis who was giving me a hug, and he said, "We did it. We won. We're Olympic champions. We tied." And I was like, "We tied? That's so crazy."
Lots still to come, including your market summary. You can also catch us on YouTube and on our website. Don't go away.
CNN Money Switzerland business weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with North America. CNNMoney Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Time now for that long-awaited market news. The SMI was without any real direction today before closing in the green. In fact, it was a quiet day all round, Germany and France also ending in the green. And this lack of momentum in markets is probably owing to the fact that the US exchange was closed yesterday. However, on the Swiss SPI index today, building technology firm MAIER published its first annual results since merging. And they were rather disappointing, sending shares well into the red. In what might be better news for your pocket, following minor recoveries in recent days, oil prices are down again. You might remember oil saw 8 months of continuing growth until Brent began falling in February. Not forgetting, though, that it's still $10 more a barrel today compared to 1 year ago. And ending on a positive note, although adjusting slightly today, copper prices have been rosier lately, maybe down to all those Olympic medals or the indication that the world economy is at full strength. While commodity prices give us a good window into the health of the global economy, what we really want to know about, though, is the price of oil. And tomorrow, global commodity giant Glencore, located just down the road from here, presents its full-year results. Here to tell us more is Carsten Menke, commodity analyst at Julius Baer. Carsten, thanks for joining us. Now, commodity prices have been enjoying a better time lately. What are the reasons?
Well, as you already said, it's the global economy, which is booming. So we have a synchronized upswing in the emerging markets and also in the developed markets. Something we haven't seen since 2010, 2011. So that is boosting demand for commodities. We also have a weaker dollar, which tends to be a tailwind for commodities as well. And the market mood is not too bad. So there is a lot of money which has flown back into the commodity markets.
Tell me more about the demand, the fundamentals that are really driving the commodity markets. Where's the demand really coming from?
Well, of course, China. I mean, China is accounting for more than or around half of metals demand. So whenever metal markets move, it has to be about China. Yet we have to say that more recently we've seen some signs of weakness coming out of China, out of its old economy. So the property market, the infrastructure segment. So those parts of the market that had been benefiting from the stimulus program China launched 2 years back. And from our point of view, this is an area of concern, something which the market should care about, and not so much about what is happening in the United States or in Europe, for example.
And when we have to pick out certain commodities, in your opinion, what's performing surprisingly well?
Well, copper is one market which has been surprising quite well. It is heavily exposed to China. It's heavily exposed to the property market, and that's where we see some weakness looming. And what is also surprising about copper is that it has reacted positively to any news about this infrastructure program in the United States, which is still far away, which is just a plan, and which most likely will also face some political opposition.
And what about, we're hearing from Glencore tomorrow. We're expecting good results. And what is that mostly owing to?
Well, simply higher prices. So if you look across their portfolio, they have copper, which is at a multi-year high. They have zinc, which is a 10-year high, I think. They have cobalt, the new hype metal, which is a record high. So that plays well into their pockets. And 2 years ago, when they were standing with their back against the wall, the whole mining industry, actually, they did their homework and brought down costs. And that supports margins today. Where
does the demand come from for cobalt? Tell me more about that.
Well, in theory, it should be the batteries you need for all the electric cars. But the market share of electric cars is less than 1% globally. So there is a certain expectations component in cobalt prices today, we believe. You could also call it speculation, right? If you want to put more pronounced connotation on it. But that's the point. Cobalt is clearly the extreme example, but copper also plays into that direction. Nickel also, lithium. So all these metals we associate with electric vehicles, they enjoyed quite a run last year, and in our view, not fully justified.
So not fleets of electric cars stored somewhere?
No, well, not before 2025, 2035. And depending on your assumptions on global car sales in 15 years' time, depending on your assumption of the electric vehicle penetration, depending on your assumption of the setup of the batteries, of the cobalt content, of the nickel content, you just come up with a very, very wide range of possible outcomes where demand could be in 2035. So it's more thinking scenarios rather than actual forecasts of demand.
Oil is the big one that most people talk about. And again, prices pretty healthy in recent, or more recent times, I should say. Is it real demand that's driving those prices, or is it more politics?
Well, politics, of course, played into the supply and demand balance for oil after OPEC decided, together with Russia, to curb supplies. So this has contributed to a tightening of the oil market, which we see, for example, in the US oil inventories. They have come down heavily from the highs. But also for oil, there is a lot of money which has moved into the market. And if you just look at the positioning of hedge funds, for example, in the US futures market, this is at a very, very stretched position. And usually these kind of sentiment cycles, they roll over eventually. And in our view, this current sentiment cycle has rolled over for oil. So we are back below the 70s we reached earlier. And we think this correction, this profit taking from the futures market, that has further to go.
Just a word on US shale. Seems to be high supply there. Is it an oversupply, would you say?
Well, globally, not yet, given what OPEC and Russia have been doing. But there is a lot of shale oil coming over the next 12 months, so more than 1 million barrels per day, and that oil needs to find somebody willing to take it. It's going to Asia, so the US has become an exporter of oil. It will remain an exporter of oil, so the balances have somewhat shifted in the oil market. But in the end, it's US shale, as you said, but it's also Canadian oil, it's Brazilian oil, and this should be able to meet demand growth over the next 12 months. So from our perspective, the oil market will return to oversupply, inventories will start building again, and that's another reason why we think oil prices should go lower. So
the US becoming more and more less reliant on the world's resources?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes, although the oil market is heterogeneous, so there are different kinds of oil, heavy, light, sour, sweet, and not every refinery can take every kind of oil. So there will be still imports into the US, but there will also be exports out of the US.
Very good. Thank you very much, Carsten. And stay with us because we've got plenty more coming up, including the weather.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
News programmes are usually full of short stories that hardly go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture. Every weekday evening at 7 p.m, the big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests who take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The Big Picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
How do you make sure you're feeling good? We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show, where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m. Entertainment, culture, fashion, arts, and lifestyle. We've got it covered on Spotlight.
Spotlight with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that what I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Amanpour. CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
Oh, welcome back. Now, the European Central Bank is getting a new deputy. Spain's economic minister, Luis de Guindos, will soon be the next vice president. This after his rival from Ireland dropped out of the race Monday. This is not the only shift at the ECB. The majority of the executive board will be replaced by 2019, opening up the possibility of a change in ECB policy. We have RICARDO, CIO and Chief Economist for the Eurozone at UBS, to talk about the major changes at the top of the ECB and the possibility that the head of the ECB will be German. Thank you for joining us, RICARDO.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Now, why does the Executive Board change more or less all at once?
Yes, there's an 8-year cycle at the ECB, and by coincidence, 4 of the 7 seats will be vacated, as you said, by next year, which obviously opens up the spectre of a change in the stance of central bank policy.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but we know who second place is, but who's going to nab that top spot at the European Central Bank?
Yeah, we've seen yesterday that Germany supported the candidacy of Spain's de Guindos, and we think that next year Spain will return the favour to Germany. The two countries boast 38% of the Eurozone's population, which is enough for a blocking minority in the European Council next year. So it will be very hard to come by a German candidate, and it is no secret that Germany, after never having held any of the top 2 posts at the ECB, is very keen this time to get its turn.
And maybe you can just talk about how significant these changes, be it the German candidate or not, how significant are these changes when it comes to policy, which you mentioned earlier on? Yeah,
we think that de Guindos as well as Weidmann are two conservative policymakers, which would lead to a hockey shift in the policy stance. When we look back at what Weidmann has said so far, he has said that market expectations about the start of the interest rate hike cycle next year in the summer are about right, but we think the difference will be in the speed of the adjustment, which means that this would yield additional support to the euro, for example, with this also to Eurozone bond yields, and with this also to the Eurozone banking sector.
And in the broad economy, I mean, what does that mean for the individual person?
Yeah. I mean, the broader economy right now is doing very well. We are growing well above trend, which is very supportive for European assets, in particular the Eurozone. Nonetheless, obviously, higher macro factors like the euro, interest rates, obviously are negative for the economy. We have built this already into our numbers. We have 2.4% growth for this year, which is very strong for Eurozone standards. Nonetheless, we think that we will hardly see the same growth rates in the years to come. So somewhat a bit lower growth, around 2%. Which is still very good, but we should be already over the top with this outlook.
And let's say, you know, policy changes are made, given new people at the top. How good are the markets at pricing that in earlier on? Or do you think there will be a sort of an impact there?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen some change in the market pricing in bond markets. But we think that, given that it is not official, obviously, I mean, the process not really started for the presidency for the ECB, that the market will still have to adapt. So we think that, as I said before, it will lend additional support for Eurozone bond yields, for example, Bund in Germany, but also to the euro. And that's why we have a bullish forecast on the euro. We have a 130 forecast against the US dollar in 12 months. And further out, there could be even more upside if, as I said, the ECB will indeed hike interest rates faster.
Irrespective of any changes at the ECB, a healthy outlook for the Eurozone.
Yeah.
Now tell me, in Switzerland, we're seeing lower exports to Europe.
Yes.
I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, we have looked into that. If you look at the regional split up, you indeed see some weakness in the exports to Europe. At the same time, though, if you dig a little bit deeper, you can see also that exports into Latin America and the US have also been weaker in January. So it is not confined to Europe. With this, we think that it's like an aberration, statistical noise. Looking at the survey data, because we don't have any hard data for exports yet in January for the Eurozone, there is some conflicting signals among surveys, so it is something that we have to watch. Tomorrow we will get the purchasing manager indices. If we get a confirmation again that export orders have been a bit weaker in January, then probably something is going on, but this is not our expectation. So with this, we stay with our base case that this is an aberration and that the strength of the economy will continue also in the first quarter.
So really, this is just a knock-on effect from what we've seen coming from the United States, that
Yes. I mean, you can have, from month to month, you can have aberrations because orders are placed in a specific month, or between reporting quarters for companies, public companies. You get this from time to time. But if you look at the volatility of Swiss exports in the recent years, this is still within the normal range of moves from one month to the other.
And also a time lag, I guess, with these numbers.
Yes,
it's not
also,
true from right now. Yeah. So nothing to panic about there for the moment.
We are bullish on the Eurozone economy. Yeah.
And when we talk about politics, changes in the German coalition, anything that you're expecting
Yes.
there?
I mean, we have a very important date. On 4th of March, the SPD membership is voting on the Grand Coalition Agreement. Our baseline is that it will be accepted, so everything goes according to plan. Nonetheless, we have to watch a risk case where the SPD membership rejects the agreement. If that happens, we think that the end of Merkel's era will be accelerated. We have seen yesterday that Angela Merkel has promoted Annegret Kramp to the #2 position in case it will be needed to find a successor for her. And this again would change the equation, right? So we would go potentially into repeat elections. The ECB question would change again because the vote from Germany is held by the Chancellor. So if you have a different person, the person might have different preferences. And that could affect then the question of Jens Weidmann. But as I said, our base case is that the SPD will vote in favor of the Grand Coalition Agreement. And with this, Merkel will support Jens Weidmann candidacy next year, which should be hawkish for the ECB.
And does losing Merkel make you at UBS nervous at all?
Well, it would obviously be a change. The news will come out in terms of the Grand Coalition Agreement on the same day as the Italian elections. So our base case is a benign outcome also there, but you could have like a worst case where a market unfriendly outcome would hit markets on the day after from both Italy and Germany. And obviously that would be an unexpected event which would weigh on asset prices in the week after. That's clear, no? But our assumption is that Italy will be able to form a centrist Grand Coalition, and that the Grand Coalition in Germany would take form, that the government will be operational by Easter. So positive, but nonetheless, it's clear a risk that we have to watch, right?
But generally, it sounds like you're pretty positive for the next weeks and months for Europe.
Yes, we are above consensus for the Eurozone. That's why I have also risk-on stance at UBS and the Chief Investment Office. We have a global overweight on equities, for example. And we think that the last 12 months have shown that if politics don't get totally out of control, that the market looks through it and looks at fundamentals. And fundamentals are very strong. We have, for example, revised upwards our growth forecasts for the Eurozone in the last couple of weeks, as I said, to 2.4%, which is above consensus. I think this will ultimately shine through in asset price, for example, equities this year.
Good to have some optimism on the show. Thank you very much. Over to the Pyeongchang Olympics now, where it was another disappointing day for Team Switzerland. Martina Fuchs gets the Olympics scoop from Matt Layton.
Matt, as we know, it's not all clean sport at the Olympics with all the doping cases. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, it's really strange, isn't it? In the last couple of days, the only people to be suspected, clearly can't say proven yet, ice hockey player and a curling player. It either means that, well, they're claiming their innocence. You always have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But normally you wouldn't associate those two sports with being, especially curling, with needing to enhance your performance. Because most of these drugs, it doesn't make you a whiz kid on the day. It just means you can train harder and harder. So that's really surprising. I suppose, hypothetically, it means that all the real effort sport, they've actually started to clean up their act. And that's the good way forward. Clearly, we had the Germans a few days ago saying that the vast majority of cross-country skiers a few years ago were implicated. So let's see how that pans out. But I'd like to think that most federations are so strict on their athletes that hopefully the game's becoming a bit clearer, or probably what's happening is the cheats are becoming more sophisticated. But yes, I say to have a curler suspected really does show you what lengths that people will go to try and have that extra 1%, which is really, really disappointing.
Right. Now, Matt, we had important curling and hockey matches earlier today for Switzerland. Did they achieve the hoped-for results?
I suppose if we wanted a short broadcast, it'd be one word: no. It's all gone horribly wrong. Germany were the opposition in the ice hockey this afternoon, and Germany had to go to 26 minutes of prolongation, extra time. They beat Switzerland, so Switzerland are now out of the men's ice hockey competition, so they're not going to be in the top 8, which is very, very disappointing. A little bit earlier, the women played. That was the playoff for the 5th and the 6th position. Women, they beat Japan 1-0, so the Swiss come 5th in that one. For the actual curling, oh dear, the men, all they had to do was win one of their 2 matches today and they'd be in their semi-final. They lost to Korea in the early match 7-8, and they've just lost to United States of America 8-4, which means they're not definitely out of it, but they really have to see what other results happen tomorrow to come forward. So the women are not doing particularly well. So to be fair, all the Swiss sports in the last couple of days have really, really struggled, which I suppose is, as the Ralph Stockley and his friends in the Swiss delegation said, we are hoping to have 11 medals. So far, they had 7. It's going to be really, really difficult now to see how they push ahead. But we do have tomorrow.
Absolutely, and there's huge excitement also growing with the women's downhill skiing taking place tomorrow. Do the Swiss have a chance at all?
They do. 4 years ago, there was Dominique Gislind from Switzerland. She was ranked 8 in the world. She hadn't run a race for 4 years, and she won the gold. Remember, she shared the gold, in fact. But this time, her sister, Michelle, in the training they've just had, she was the 2nd fastest. Frighteningly, Lindsay Vonn, remember, she won in Vancouver, didn't take place last time in Sochi. She was the 4th fastest and looked really, really scary. And poor old Lara Gut, Swiss superhero, after the Super G, she was crying because she knows she'd made mistakes. She's one for the big occasions. So it's 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow in Swiss time. It's worth watching. Fingers crossed, there could be another medal for Switzerland. But it's going to be a really dynamic, exciting competition, and let the fastest win. And before last time, it was 30 years before we had a Swiss winner. So it's about time we had some more.
I'm sure you will be up and watching bright and early tomorrow morning, Matt. Now, Swiss snowboarder Pat Borgener returned home without a medal in the snowboard halfpipe last week, although he showed one of the best results of his career so far. And we will have an interview with him later in the Newsmaker hour. What did you make of his performance, Matt?
I thought it was absolutely outstanding. Bearing in mind Sean White won the gold, Japan second, Australia third, with the United States fourth. He scored, what, 87 points? And he said he did the run of his life. And he said he had a wonderful performance. So clearly, it's not quite good enough to win the medal, but it was an absolutely outstanding performance. And as you're going to appreciate a bit later, he actually did a concert with his guitar the next 3 days in the actual House of Switzerland. So he's a multicultural, multi-rounded athlete. And I think the more he gets injured, the more he plays his guitar. So we don't hate on that, but he's a very talented athlete, and I think he's having the month of his life.
Perfect combination, sports and music. Thank you so much, Matt. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And North Korea's Olympic delegation, with its cheering squad and performing arts troupe, is giving South Koreans a preview of what life could be like if inter-Korean relations continue to improve. But there's also money to be made from the easing of tensions on the Korean peninsula. As CNN's Will Ripley reports, financial gain may be motivating Kim Jong-un's heavily sanctioned regime.
A scene unimaginable just months ago. North Koreans performing in South Korea at the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics. Missile launches, nuclear tests, and escalating tensions have largely defined the Kim Jong-un era. Now, the North Korean leader is launching what some call a charm offensive, sending his sister, Kim Yo-jong, to lay the groundwork for an inter-Korean summit, sending his art troupe, athletes, and cheer squads to show the softer side of what the U.S. calls a tyrannical regime. South Korean journalist Kang Jin-gyu says North Korea is waging a PR war with a different weapon, soft power.
Beforehand, they see North Korea as a rogue state, trying to build up nuclear weapons in violation of the international agreements. But when they see the actual people performing right in front of them, I think they start thinking, wow, they're just like us.
South Korea-based teacher Dave Beck skipped a hockey match to watch the North Koreans perform.
South Koreans and North Koreans seem to really kind of respect each other. That was kind of cool.
The Korean people share centuries of heritage. The last 7 decades of division, a mere blip on the radar. But since the Korean War, the two cultures have only grown farther apart. Some South Koreans already know what it's like to live and work alongside their neighbors from the north at the Kaesong industrial complex that closed about 2 years ago as tensions escalated. Kaesong was an economic and political experiment that fell apart, a case study in the difficulties of merging capitalism and socialism. I visited in 2015 and saw North and South Koreans working side by side, producing some of the products now banned under crippling international sanctions. Kim Ik-gyum used to work at the Kaesong industrial complex. He and hundreds of other South Koreans lost their jobs in early 2016. The 2-year period has been so long for the workers, he says. There's been so much suffering. I hope they'll use this opportunity to reopen the Kaesong industrial complex soon. Capitalizing on the Korean détente may not be the primary goal. But if nuclear tensions ease, there is money to be made, which may explain why cash-strapped North Korea is on a mission to win over South Korean audiences, one performance at a time. Will Ripley, CNN, Gangneung, South Korea.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. We'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movement and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
At the end of the business day, we're only just getting started. On the living markets from 6 to 7 p.m., we crunch the numbers on the financial markets, bring you the top analysis of the day, and set the agenda for tomorrow. Always with Switzerland important global links in mind. The living markets, weeknights from 6 to 7 p.m., only on CNN Money Switzerland.
Staying true to your passion is the theme of this learning curve. I spoke to Patrick CETTIER from Strategic Career Development at ETH. He told me that if your CV demonstrates that you've consistently stayed true to what you love, then a company of your choosing will automatically identify with how you can best add value. Patrick, your role at ETH is really to advise students to prepare and plan for their future careers. So what exactly are you advising them? I mean, what should be on their CVs?
I mean, it's a very important topic. I think you need to think early in your career what you want to do in your life and in your career and what you're passionate about. I mean, that's extremely important. So don't build your CV around some perception you have about what you should do, but think about first what you want to do and achieve and where you want to have an impact, and then you can take the right steps.
So passion and purpose is what I'm hearing. Is that also what the employer is looking for these days, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, in general, you want people who believe in what the company is doing, and actually only then actually people do a good job, because nowadays I have the impression especially younger talents are not as much incentivized only by money, but they're much more thinking about, is it the right thing to do? And so if this matches, I think it's good for the employer and of course for the employee.
And I mean, what are your tips? I mean, how can students really make themselves seen by an employer and make the passion come through the CV?
I think a CV in general is just a snapshot of what you've done so far. So the question is really, did you actually stay true to your passions and your purpose? And did you do activities and did you do experiences that add value to a future employer? And if it does, it will become a very easy conversation, because the employer sees that you are actually bringing the experience that is relevant, and for you it will be easy because it's just the next step for you to join. So I think being true to yourself and not guided by alternative motives is very important.
We'll come back to that in a while, you know, in terms of what students and what younger people are looking for in terms of, you know, managing their time and careers. But in terms of, you know, knowledge, I mean, knowledge is really no longer valuable as it once was, in a sense. I mean, we all have it. So how can you really, you know, stand heads and shoulders above the rest? I mean, if you take some of the dominant tech firms, for example, Amazon, Google, I mean, they're all snapping up the best talent for quite a high price. So where does that leave the rest of us who are perhaps not in that, you know, in that extreme league of being the best talent?
I mean, it's you bring up like a very important topic. I mean, nowadays knowledge is just a fingertip away. I mean, you put it into Google and you get any search results for the topic and get knowledgeable around it. Or maybe in the future, artificial intelligence will do it for us. So I personally see that the interpretation of knowledge is important and making it actionable, or combining knowledge from different fields into something new. Also, a certain creativity is very important. And when you see what's happening at the big tech companies that you were mentioning, I mean, it's a winner-takes-it-all economy. I mean, you have dominant companies, and through the network effects, they dominate an entire business, and they are actually really hiring the best people in the world to work for them. And especially on the technology side, be it programmers, be it database specialists, and they pay insane salaries. So it's very hard for, let's say, the average company that's also not specialized in this field to catch up. And that's, of course, accelerating over the next years. So it's an exponential development.
Okay, and I mean, in terms of taking one step back in terms of what to study before you even get to the career choice part. I mean, what are the hot topics to study nowadays? I mean, does it have to all be tech?
Certainly not. I mean, there's a whole range of jobs that still are relevant in general. I mean, it's not that all the jobs will disappear. And then you have, outside of tech, of course, a lot of developments that are very interesting and important, be it the entire health care sector, also caring for older people. The education sector will be very important, but also just very normal jobs where you have to be hands-on, very important, or anything to do with interaction with humans. So the service industry will be very important still. And then, of course, you have technology. So if you want to make a difference or specialize in a certain area, I think technology is an important element. And actually, all of us should have a basic understanding of also reading code. It's like, I mean, we all learn to write and read, and reading code of a program and how to do this, or at least understanding how you can use it, is important. And this could be one of the elements that I would advise in the future, also starting very early.
But is it really relevant if you're, say, in healthcare to know how to code? I mean, really everyone has to know?
Maybe not. I mean, if it's really not your passion, then don't do it, as always. But I think having a basic understanding what's happening around you would be helpful, I think, also for the next generation. I mean, I'm potentially already too old for it, so I try to find someone who's an expert in it, and he can tell me how to deal with it. But I think for the next generation, if you're still early, you should try to get at least a basic understanding how it works, because then you can get other people to work with it, and you at least understand it. So I think that would be helpful.
As a base knowledge.
Yeah. And also in healthcare.
And you speak of some of the relevant jobs in the services industry, for example. I mean, is that really true? I mean, you don't think that automation, robotics will replace a lot of those jobs? I mean, is it still going to be the person that's going to be performing those jobs and services?
I guess it very much depends on the areas, but you see those trends that actually, especially repetitive tasks, will be replaced, and this has been true in the past. I mean, robots and automation have been going on in, let's say, auto production or wherever you look for a long time. That's not new. What's new is the pace of this development, and so the adaptation of people to this pace of change will be more challenging, and finding the new occupations will take some time in the transition.
And I mean, thinking of the finance industry, for example, I mean, will there be a new opportunity there? I mean, some of those sort of back office jobs, the repetitive jobs, the perhaps analytical jobs, I mean, automation will be
present there. I mean, you must be seeing a lot of jobs made redundant in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very good news, you know, because some of the jobs are really boring, and so who wants to do them anyway? So I think it's great that, people.
To purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a purpose to do like stamping something or filing something. I mean, if you make lives better for people as well, and they do something else that's maybe more interesting for them. So, but yes, you will see a lot of automation. You will see less employment in the financial industry. You will see a focus on value-adding activities that human can provide. So I think there you have a lot of potential to still automate, and to the benefit of everybody. You know, when you in the end also look into what's happening with blockchain in the end, and the distributed ledger that helps you again to revolutionize industries to the benefit of the consumer. Transactions will go instantaneously. I mean, sometimes when you look at doing a wire transfer to another country, it takes several days still now.
And when considering a new job, what's the first thing you think about? Maybe money? Well, according to a new survey, many workers say the perfect job isn't all about the cash. CNN's Mary Maloney explains in Consumer Watch.
Looking for a new gig? You're not alone. According to recruitment firm Selby Jennings, 75% of experienced professionals surveyed expect their next job to be at a different company.
People do have more choices than they've ever had. Unemployment's at historic lows. The access to information about different opportunities more widely available than ever, and there is a true war for talent out there for the absolute best people.
The majority of those surveyed say they will look at the whole package before accepting a new job, and not just the cash.
Money isn't everything. Things like culture, things like environment, diversity, inclusion, all of these factors play much higher importance than ever before, and much higher importance on why people actually stay with a firm or choose to go.
It's never too late to consider a job change.
There are lots of different ways to change your career trajectory in this day and age, so be open to new options out there and be readily available to take a look at them.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Mary Maloney.
This week, the CNN Freedom Project brings the dramatic story of migrants escaping from Libya, then abandoned in the Mediterranean Sea by human traffickers. The International Organization for Migration says children and pregnant women are the most exposed to abuse and human trafficking as they risk their lives to try to reach Europe. CNN's Isa Suarez brings us some of their stories.
Children and women first.
Smugglers abandoned this dinghy off the coast of Libya. No engine, no paddle. Humanitarian organisation Proactiva Open Arms rescued 695 migrants from this deadly sea in the space of 1 week. But these Mediterranean waters have claimed more than 400 lives in 2018 alone, according to the International Organization for Migration, the IOM. For most, the peril begins before boarding a dinghy in Libya. 18-year-old Cone from Ivory Coast tells us about her experiences over the 5 months she spent waiting and worrying.
Les Libyens ne respectent pas les femmes. Même les femmes enceintes, les Libyens vont frapper les femmes enceintes. Même si tu fais erreur, ils vont te frapper, ils vont te blesser. En plus, ils vont violer les filles.
Violence and a lack of dignity. But the abuses don't end there. Migrants between the age of 14 to 17 are most at risk, with nearly 9 out of 10 exposed to human trafficking along the central Mediterranean route, according to the IOM. Suleiman knows it well. He left Guinea in the summer of 2016 as a 17-year-old.
Ebola a ravagé toute ma famille, mon père, ma mère et mes 2 frères. Ça restait une grande sœur avec un petit frère.
At each step of his journey through Mali and Algeria, Suleiman says he had to find the money to pay for the next step. But as he tried to cross into Libya,
les taximètres qui vous prend de l'Algérie pour rentrer en Libye, c'est eux qui vont négocier avec les Libyens qui ont des prisons pour vous vendre.
Suleiman says he discovered he had been sold and bought by gangsters in the city of Bani Walid. Their business? Extorting money from defenseless migrants.
Prison de la Libye, que moi j'ai fait, on frappe chaque matin. On peut rester 2 jours sans manger. Électricité, on vous branche électricité.
After several months of torture, Suleiman says he got out thanks to a payment of $1,000 made by his family. But he says hundreds were left behind, many still in prison. According to the Italian government, the number of migrant arrivals dropped by 70% since July of 2017. While some in Europe may applaud this drop, thousands of migrants are now in Libya, trapped in limbo, huddled in fear. Isa Suarez, CNN.
You're watching the Swiss Pulse, and here with me in the studio is my colleague Anna Maria. And next hour is Big Picture, and you're going to be talking all about the vote that could be coming up, well, is coming up on the 4th of March, and that could be to end public funding for broadcast in Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. It is the famous No-Billag vote, which is, it's No-Billag in the sense that there's a group that wants to end this Billag fee, the license fee that everybody pays, that families and households pay every year for the right to use the broadcasting system, the public system, radio and TV in Switzerland. So it's a vote to end this. And then there's, of course, the opposition, the people who don't think it should be ended. And I would say right now the vote is pretty close.
So I guess people consume media in very different ways now. So it's not actually, you know, that great for people that are paying for TV and radio that they're not consuming? Is this where it all stemmed from?
Well, yes. I mean, that's part of the basic argument. You know, people are like, this is a service that I don't need. But it is the Swiss government's way of protecting, in a way, their media and protecting the media landscape of the specific Swiss broadcasting networks around the country.
It sounds quite familiar in terms of, I think other countries have gone through similar things like this.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of countries that do charge licensing fees all over Europe. We do this, but then again, you also have more private TVs in different countries in Europe. So anyway, it could, in a nutshell, it could really change the media landscape if No-Billag wins, meaning that the Billag fee, the licensing fees are eliminated. It could really change the landscape. If the No-Billag initiative does not win, then in theory, things would remain the same, but sources are telling us that either way, things have to change. Something has to change because we've gotten to this point, right?
And mostly we consume online.
Yes.
I don't know what those figures are like now.
Habits are changing, absolutely. Habits are changing.
Lots can be seen on YouTube, can be seen in various different ways. So
it is a big discussion, though. It's one of the most anticipated votes of the year, and that's why, of course, we're going to have it on the Big Picture. We'll have lots to talk about.
Complex.
Yes.
So enjoy that hour. It sounds deep, as it should be on the Big Picture. That's right. Thanks very much, Anna Maria. And thank you to you for watching. As we mentioned, you can watch our CNN Money Switzerland on YouTube and on our website. So catch up with the latest. Take care. See you soon.
CNN Money Switzerland Leisure Weather. We start with a webcam of the day. We continue with the Alps of western Switzerland. And the weather forecast for the next days. A glance now on the resorts of central and eastern Switzerland. And an overview of the weather conditions to come. Here is the snow report of the ski resorts in France. And the weather forecast for this region. And we end with the Austrian and Italian Alps. We wish you a Pleasant stay in the money.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah.
Oh, Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why. I just want to press you on one further point. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
Like a good TV drama, the No-Billag initiative is gripping Switzerland. On March 4th, it is the series finale, and people will vote on whether to switch off public service broadcast funding for good. On The Big Picture tonight, we tune into the views of campaigners on both sides. Roger Schawinski is a media pioneer and author, and he told us the world is watching.
And it would be totally un-Swiss to do something so radical. And that's why really a lot of foreign stations, especially a television station in Germany, are watching what is happening. I'm giving an interview in Germany all the time and in Austria and now here on this great channel. So really, this could be groundbreaking. And I'm sure a lot of people from the ultra-right in Germany and in other countries are waiting for yes, in this case, to say, we want to do the same thing.
And his work is on a vast scale, using powerful lights and intricate technology to project a message or story onto the likes of buildings and landscapes. Tonight, our newsmaker light artist, Gary Hofstadter, lets us in on the detailed process behind his latest work to take the Swiss brand on a grand light tour of America, and where he gets his inspiration for the work.
I'm doing these light art projections for art or business or marketing, environmental, state ceremonies, whatever. And I discovered quite fast that these projections are so environmental friendly. It's just light for an hour or two and you go. You even don't touch the building. So the point is getting the creativity and the great know-how about history, human being, and our planet, you combine these things, then you can alert or highlight a situation.
Good evening. You're watching The Big Picture. I am Ana Maria Montero, and it's great to have you here. Let's get started. How much longer? All right, it is that time now to take a look at those news making headlines in Switzerland and around the world. Export figures for Switzerland are down compared to last month, due mainly to weaker pharmaceutical exports. However, watch exports are back in line with expectations, according to the Federation of the Swiss Watch Industry. Swiss watch exports were up by 12.5% in January compared to last year. China climbed into second place, overtaking the U.S., where watch export numbers have declined over the past 2 years. And Swiss consumers are buying more online. Figures reported on Tuesday show that e-commerce sales rose by 10% last year, taking it to a total of 8.6 billion francs. A key finding in the research presented by Swiss Post and the Association of E-commerce Traders is that 1.6 billion francs were spent online receiving goods from abroad. That is a 23% increase from the year before. And Europe's largest bank, HSBC, saw increases in annual revenues and full-year profit, as well as a 140% rise in reported profit before tax. Now, this was due in part to growth in Asia. And despite the positive numbers, the bank's yearly report card missed the mark, according to some analysts. The numbers were also overshadowed, given that HSBC said it could face penalties in excess of $1.5 billion, stemming from investigations into claims that its Swiss private bank helped clients evade paying taxes. Now, it's a mixed send-off for outgoing CEO Stuart Gulliver, who is seen by most as instrumental in turning around the bank during his 7-year reign. He said in a statement that HSBC has moved on from the mistakes of the past. And the man assigned to oversee the Justice Department's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election is taking a closer look at U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. CNN has learned that questions are now being asked about Kushner's personal business dealings when he was a lead contact for foreign governments. Sources tell CNN that there is a specific interest in discussions Kushner had with potential Chinese and Qatari investors to secure money for one of his company's buildings facing financial troubles. It's not clear what's behind the sudden interest in the discussions. And Venezuela launched the pre-sale of a new commodity-backed digital currency called Petro on Tuesday. The launch of the so-called cryptocurrency comes as Venezuela faces deepening economic and political crisis. According to the government, the Petro is backed by oil, gas, gold, and diamonds, and is meant to help overcome U.S. and EU sanctions. The opposition-controlled National Assembly in Venezuela has opposed the idea of the Petro, labeling it illegal. The U.S. also warned that buying the Petro could violate sanctions against Venezuela, which prohibit the purchase of newly issued Venezuelan debt. Now, they say every second counts, but at the Olympics, it's more like every 100th of a second. And nowhere was that more evident than in the men's two-man bobsled, as Canada and Germany finished in a dead heat for first place. So this means Canada's Justin Krieps and Alexander Kopacz and Germany's Francesco Friedrich and Thorsten Margis will all walk away with a gold medal. CNN's Christina McFarland caught up with the Canadian duo about their remarkable Olympic moment.
I think it'll leave a mark on history, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really cool, you know, it's just to have a race that's that tight in the first place on such a technical track. You know, it's coming down to the 100th for sure. Each run, and then, you know, to tie, it doesn't get much more exciting than that, and you get to have an extra two guys who are as excited as you are, because you all won. You became Olympic champions. And when I found out we tied, it was Torsten Margus who was giving me a hug, and he said, "We did it. We won. We're Olympic champions. We tied." And I was like, "We tied? That's so crazy."
But on March 4th, Switzerland will vote on getting rid of the compulsory radio and television license fee, the so-called No-Billag initiative. Now, if voters say yes, Switzerland will become the first country in Europe to abolish public service broadcasting. So still to come, we look at the views from all sides, and one man who will be following developments is Roger Schawinski, who is a media pioneer and author. Stay with us.
Because it's so radical. I call it the mother of all votes in Switzerland. And
is this our Brexit or our Trump vote?
Yes. Yes, exactly. In my last chapter, I said, exactly like Brexit. They say, we're going to change things, but we don't know what's going to happen next. And I say, if you don't know where you land, you shouldn't jump. The English did it, and I hope the Swiss don't do it, even if the subject is very different.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour.
News programs are usually full of short stories that barely go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture every weekday evening at 7 p.m. The big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests that take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The big picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
It's high energy and fast-paced, so buckle up as Front Seat brings you the latest news and views from the automotive world. Car developments, industry news, interviews with successful drivers, the latest trends and next-level innovation here in Switzerland and around the world. On Front Seat, we'll keep you on the right road.
Front Seat with Hannah Wise on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show, where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
For somebody.
Welcome back to The Big Picture. Tonight, we are tuning into a popular vote which could change the landscape of the Swiss media industry. The vote on March 4th will decide if the current broadcast license fee should be scrapped. Now, supporters of the initiative want to change Article 93 of the Swiss Constitution, which covers radio and television. The name of the popular vote, you've probably heard it, is No-Billag. However, it's a bit confusing because actually it's not about the Billag itself. BILAG is just the company charged with billing consumers for their use of services from the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation. But even so, BILAG has become symbolical for the opposition against the license fees that BILAG is supposed to collect. Now, if we look, the license fees in Europe, in Switzerland, we will be paying, as of next year, would be paying about we are paying now about 451 francs a year. And next year, that would be reduced to 365. But still, it's the highest fee in Europe. You're looking at Austria, Germany, Italy, UK. You go from 350 in Austria, 250 in Germany, down to 100 in Italy a year, 100 francs. And then, of course, the UK is also down at the bottom, just a little over 100. So with a total revenue of 1.6 billion francs in 2016, the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation is by far the largest media company in Switzerland. We see again SBC at the top, followed by Ringier, Tamedia, NZZ Group, and Asset Medien. So again, by far, the largest broadcasting company and media company in Switzerland. Now, the main revenue stream for the SBC is from license fees. 2016 license fees accounted for 75%, so the biggest part of the pie here. That's more than 1.2 billion francs. The other 25% is advertising and sponsoring, and this accounted for approximately 326 million. Now, if we keep looking at this, also reliant on the license fees are 21 local radio stations, as well as 13 regional TV stations. So you can see all of these dots here represent both TV and radio stations scattered all over the country. And collectively, these all get 61 million francs. So, as you can see, lots of big numbers. There's a lot at stake when it comes to the vote on March 4th. Cultural institutions and musicians, meanwhile, say the No-Billag initiative would deal a significant blow, particularly in rural regions. So let's hear now from the people behind the initiative. My colleague Sarah Chiarello has talked to Florian MAIER from the organizing committee.
It just would really give freedom of media in Switzerland, because right now we have a state media company which is getting like 1.2 billion in subsidies every year, and therefore any competition is just impossible.
Who would benefit and who would lose?
It's always hard to say. I mean, the people who benefit the most are the really citizens of Switzerland, because every household will save 400 plus Swiss francs. Who would lose? Well, there is many companies surrounding the state media complex which are benefiting, which take big, huge salaries. And yes, they would lose probably, because they suddenly would find themselves in a free market where they need to produce products which people in fact buy.
TV companies of Germany have the biggest market share in Switzerland today. They would profit even more if a yes to No-Billag is reality. Did you consider this effect?
Well, we will just see what do people want to watch. I mean, maybe CNN is getting in. We don't know what people are interested in. For now, we have a big interest in information, and German television companies do not provide any information as for now. Maybe this change after the vote.
What do you mean they do not provide information?
Right now, they don't have any news or any kind of information there. There is usually just series and reality TV and so on.
So you would expect foreign companies, media companies, to actually report on current affairs here in Switzerland?
Whether they're domestic or from abroad, we don't know. We're leaving it to the free market, so there will be decisions made decentralized. So it's not a planned economy where the state or any big plan say who is going to provide what.
The Swiss Broadcasting Company and your opponents, they claim that there is no room for a Swiss broadcasting company without license fees. It would have to file for bankruptcy. What do you think? Why do you think differently?
Well, I mean, basically, that's a big failure in management. I mean, if you have a management who knows of this initiative for four years now, and they didn't make any plans, any contingency plan, they probably have to be sacked because it's their job to move along, even if regulations change, if laws changes.
You claim that the Swiss broadcasting company can get enough income from advertisement and sponsoring. Big advertising companies don't see it that way, though.
Well, it depends. Maybe a certain part of the programs now have to move into a paid content way, whereas others, like the news, so like the big news in Switzerland, which is broadcast at 7, this one is right now working as it is. So the advertisements they get for this show is somewhat 80 million a year, whereas the production of the show is 22 million. So they're really making good money. Then there are other shows which are right now just produced ways too expensive. So there is one show called Arena, where there is a big discussion of like 4 politicians. Right now it's produced as a cost of 250,000 Swiss francs, one show. But to have four politicians debating, you can also downsize here. Whereas other content, like sports, maybe just have to move to a paid TV.
For you, that would be the solution?
That's just the most straightforward solution. However, the text of the initiative does not state that they have to do it in any kind of way. That's, again, what the management of the now state media company has to decide.
Do you think the Swiss broadcasting company has underestimated your initiative?
They probably did. Well, this is like a real Swiss popular initiative, so it is not made by a big party or like the unions. It's really made by young people. We got support of the Youth Liberal Party and the Youth Popular Party. However, we did not get like big support from the big donors and so on. So this is really the way an initiative should be done. And they probably just saw it in a way, oh, well, these young people, they just can't do it. They will never get the signatures.
Private media companies are having hard times. Would a no vote help them?
Well, there is certain like local stations which is a bit of a weird story. So in 2007, there was a decision made to support them with some governmental money. And they just turned into so-called zombie companies. So they can only survive on state funding, which is not viable for the future. So there's more and more sectors in the whole industries to get state subsidies and just live on these subsidies. But these companies eventually will need to find a way to really earn money or to file for bankruptcy.
So you're not really concerned about all these TV stations and journalists working in these local radios?
The thing is, these stations, there are very few of them which just get concessions for some like minor parts, and maybe they have to go bigger, so meaning like sort of a bigger piece of land or territory population, or they have to be more focused to really keep their audience up. But as it is now, most of these are just not doing a good program, and people are just not watching it, and that's their main problem.
How do you know people don't like these programs or are not watching them?
Oh, the main reason is they just don't have the audience. I mean, the figures, they're out, you can see them in the internet. However, they're just not having a big reach.
What about the smaller parts like Ticino, Romanche? They would not have any TV stations without license fees from the German-speaking part of Switzerland. So what would be the solution for them?
Well, Ticino, for some reason, like during the collection of the signatures, so if you take it per capita, like the second highest state was Ticino in signatures we received. So there is as well a strong opposition there against the state media, especially as usually the director of the Italian-speaking TV is sometimes referred as the president of all of Ticino, as he behaves certainly in this way. So as well in Ticino there is a big opposition against it. However, I cannot like give straightaway solutions. I just know the people in Ticino also kind of struggle with these fees.
How should the media landscape be in Switzerland?
If we are already going into the newspapers, we have a free market with competition. We have good quality newspapers, we have cheap newspapers, we have specialized newspapers, and it should be similar with the audiovisual media, so meaning radios and television. So you will have specialized TV stations, you will have stations which are maybe paid content, which provide a really good quality, and maybe some free shows which are maybe lower in quality, but free.
How can we ensure, I mean, if the No-Billag vote gets the yes, we won't have the safeguards that we have now in the Swiss Broadcasting Company's mandate about diversity, accuracy of information, and all that. So how is it going to be with private media only, or even foreign companies having media here?
Really important is that you have independent media. Right now they're not independent, so you have a federal council who elects the board of directors of this media company. They as well can raise or lower the funding they get every 2 years. So right now they're just not independent, and by not being independent they cannot really provide accurate information because they will never ever going to really challenge the Swiss government.
So that's your opinion, that they're not independent because they get funded for the government, even though in their mandate it's written that they have independence in the way they report?
Yes, it is their mandate, but if you get the money from one side, you will always turn a blind eye on that thing.
How did you actually build this thought that we should live without public-supported media?
Yeah, when I grew up, I was watching a lot of TV. However, it somewhat faded when I was a teenager. Right now I'm watching very little television, and it's just unfair that I have to pay this kind of money, even though I'm not watching it. Because again, what I do have is I have an account for watching series, and I have a newspaper subscription, and both of these cost as well money, and they are again basically doing the same. One is for information and one is for watching series. So I don't need this like on top state media offer.
The thing is that because of the complexity of the country and the fact that we have so many different languages, media here, the consumption of media, whether it's written press or broadcast, is expensive because of the different languages, the diversity of our country. So how do you think we could solve that issue?
Yeah, if you give people freedom of choice. So right now you do not have the freedom of choice, you just have to pay these licensing fees. However, this also gives you maybe a no on a newspaper. So because everything you buy is on top of that. It's not a choice that you just have to spend whatever 400 francs and you can choose whether to spend on a newspaper or to spend it on the state media or spend it on whatever other channels.
Don't you think that there's a misunderstanding by some people about, yes, we are against the public TV, but this is not only this. We're going to have people fired if we have a yes. We are going to have maybe less covered topics because public states TV is everywhere now in Switzerland. So do you feel the gap or not?
Well, right now there is these subsidies of 1.2 billion, and this just gives basically one big company which has pretty much everything what is radio and television in Switzerland. So if they lose a certain percent of their market share, it will be more diverse because you will have more stations coming in, you will have a more diverse broadcasting than it is now.
But how can we ensure that having this new diverse landscape, it's going to be more attractive for people and more interesting and have better information?
Because if you have to be funded privately, you really need to make an offer people want to buy. Right now, whatever the Swiss broadcasting company does, they can just always refer to the Constitution and say, well, okay, we're doing a dumb show. Well, it says in the Constitution we have to do that. They're doing ways over the top information. So there was a vote in the Federal Council, and they had some 300 people in the Parliament building to do the whole report. Yes, and they can say, well, it's in the Constitution, we have to inform people. However, there was a private TV station from Zurich. They sent in 4 people. So it's also doable with much less resources.
So for you, just to wrap it up, it's not a duty of a government to support large independent media?
Well, if they were independent, it would be a whole other story. But they're not. They're not independent if the government funds them, because as soon as that happens, they will turning blind eyes on whatever works with the government.
One politician who is clear on where she stands on the issue is Media Minister Doris Leuthard. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, our editor-in-chief Urs Gredig spoke with Ms. Leuthard about the vote.
Well, I think I do my best to inform the Swiss citizens in a way that they say no to this initiative, because it will be really harmful to our media concept. We need in a direct democracy a variety of media, and especially on radio, TV. We have this change also to the internet, to online platforms. And here we need also to adapt, and therefore worldwide I don't see solutions where you have only the private sector which can survive with publicity and with promotion, with sponsoring or pay TV solutions. And therefore, when you want to guarantee the variety from sports to entertainment to information to culture, education, I think the dual model of a public fee and private offers is those who is convincing me the most.
Swiss people living abroad are among those campaigning against the No-Billag initiative. They argue that they rely on the service to keep them in the loop. Now, coming up, we'll have much more on this issue as the countdown to the March 4th vote continues. Don't go away.
CNN Money Switzerland Business Weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Now, welcome back to The Big Picture here on CNN Money Switzerland, where tonight we talk about one of the most important public votes in the country in the last years. It's all about the No-Billag vote, which is taking place on March the 4th. Now, the Swiss will vote on getting rid of the compulsory radio and television license fees. By voting yes, the way public broadcasting is financed will change completely. Switzerland will become the first country in Europe to abolish the bulk of its public service broadcasting. Therefore, the vote is watched closely by other countries, not only in Europe, but also in the U.S. Earlier, my colleague Hannah Weiss spoke to CNN media reporter Hadas Gold, who was named one of the most influential media reporters in 2017.
Hadass, now on March the 4th, the Swiss are going to be voting on getting rid of this compulsory radio and television licence fee. And if they say yes, Switzerland will become the first country in Europe to abolish the bulk of its public service broadcasting. Have you heard much about this vote?
This vote has, I think, made probably more news in Europe than it has in the United States, but obviously the European ways for a lot of European countries of financing their public broadcasters is much different in the United States because the U.S. is so much bigger. There's a lot of private financing for media, and if you were to try to do private financing and commercial financing for media in a country like Switzerland, I have a feeling that it wouldn't go over as smoothly as it might in the U.S., and some even argued in the U.S. it doesn't go over very smoothly because Switzerland is such a small country and because it has so many different languages that you need to broadcast in, that can really affect, especially if you're going to have a private funding of a broadcaster, it can affect not only the quality, but then you might have different tiers in terms of a certain language might have a better broadcast than another language.
Well, let's just focus on the situation then in Europe. I know that many people in the UK will be watching this because there has been a similar kind of discussion there as well, hasn't there?
There has been, and this actually has come up several times over the past few years in the UK when it comes to the BBC and when it comes to the, the financing of the BBC, because it's similarly done through this sort of license fee. And with the BBC, it is such a huge part of the life in the UK. And there are some people who feel as though it should be changed. But so far, the attempts to change the financing for the BBC when it comes to that license fee have not taken effect yet. But because this keeps coming up, and it seems to keep coming up with more frequency, it would come up for a few years and then go quiet for a few years. And now we're seeing it pretty much almost every 2 years. This debate is coming up in the UK over the BBC and what happens. And just recently, we've had this huge debate in the UK over the pay gap with the BBC and how the presenters are paid and whether they're paid too much and whether women aren't paid the same. And all of that comes into play because it's all a taxpayer's money, really.
And what about the motivations behind such things? Because it's obviously a very passionate discussion here in Switzerland. We've seen the very same in the UK. But where are these motivations coming from? What are people wanting to change? Is it the fact that they just want to change policy, or is it just viewing habits are changing?
Viewing habits are changing, but if you think about it, people just don't like paying taxes or fees in general. And some people might say, well, I don't watch that much television, so why do I have to pay this fee, just like everybody else, which in countries like Switzerland can be very expensive per household. And people's viewing habits are changing. They'll say, I watch streaming TV. I don't watch the public broadcaster anymore. Some people also disagree with the way that the news is presented with these public broadcasters. And they say, if I'm paying for this through my taxes, they should present the news in the way that I feel comfortable with. Not that some, professionals in some high tower will decide that that's the way the news should be presented. And so you have disagreements over how the news is presented. Some people in the UK think that the BBC is too liberal or too conservative, or they don't like the certain shows that come up. So this is a common debate that comes up. And also there's the fear of government influence over the broadcaster. Now, in certain countries in Europe, there are clear firewalls between the government and the editorial independence of these broadcasters. But there's always that fear that government might try to influence it in some way. And some people feel more comfortable by having the media be completely separated from the government and not have them be financed by the government and have no control from the government over these media, even if they claim there's some sort of editorial firewall. So you have a lot of different arguments here between why some people feel that this type of licensing fee should be revoked.
And thinking about the situation, particularly here in Switzerland, where are you seeing the opposition coming from? Is it from the political parties, or do you think that we are actually having it from broadcasters themselves?
I think it could be a combination. I've seen some polls, though, that show that the public is at least somewhere near 60% in support of continuing the way things are in Switzerland. So that tends to believe that maybe this vote will go over, at least if you are in favor of the way the public financing goes now, that it will go over in that direction. But it's clear that this is a debate that's going to continue happening not only in Europe, but in other countries that have public financing of broadcasters. Because, as you said, we are changing the ways we're watching television, and we're changing the ways we see media. Everything is becoming much more fragmented.
And if the vote does get the go-ahead, just kind of explain to us what's happening in the United States now, because is that the way that we potentially could see Switzerland going as well?
It could be. The United States has a system where we don't have at all traditional public broadcasters in the same way that the UK or Switzerland do. We do have certain ones. We have National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting, PBS. But those have such a small portion of their financing are actually from the federal government. Less than 1%, for example, of National Public Radio's money comes from the federal government. The rest of it comes from donations, from grants, and from sponsorships. So when you listen to NPR or you watch PBS in the United States, you'll hear a segment that says, this is brought to you by Johnson & Johnson or something like that. So it's not quite a traditional commercial, but it is a sponsored segment. And they're always doing fundraising drives. You'll see it on PBS and on NPR where they're asking the public to donate money to this news organization. And because of that, you find that a lot of times these broadcasters run into financial difficulties. They cannot pay their journalists as much as the private television or newspapers can, so they might have trouble attracting the top talent that they want. But then you still have people thinking that the government somehow influences these news organizations, or that the public should try to reduce funding. Actually, in the budget that President Donald Trump just proposed this week, he has called for completely cutting the funding of NPR and PBS and other public media in the United States. Now, like I said, it's not a huge percentage of their funding, but it is a vital percentage of their funding, and without it, they wouldn't be able to continue their work.
And this would potentially be one of the challenges facing us here in Switzerland.
It definitely would be one of the challenges in Switzerland because if you're taking away that licensing fee, you are completely taking away the lifeline for public broadcasting in Switzerland. And so they would have to find new avenues and new revenue streams. And that could go from commercials to sponsorship, which could also change how the viewers see it. I mean, if they're used to not seeing a certain type of television program and then it changes on them, they might turn it off. And then if nobody's watching, you don't have advertising revenue. And obviously advertising revenue and different sponsorships, it can in some ways change the type of content you see, because if an advertiser doesn't want to advertise next to whatever you present, some organizations might change what they're presenting.
And Hadass, just finally, I mean, how much is the rest of the world, especially in Europe, watching what happens in Switzerland? Could this be a catalyst for other countries to follow suit?
This often happens that what happens in Europe, the United States and other countries pay close attention to, because European media has a more unique setup in terms of government regulation and funding. And I know that in the UK, people are paying very close attention to what's happening in Switzerland, because some people who are in support of the BBC are afraid that if this vote goes through and the public financing is changed, that's going to give motivation to people in the UK to do the same with the BBC, and that the debate is going to start up again. And similar to what we've seen around the world with all these changes from, Brexit or other things, that it's going to sort of be a catalyst and cause other reactions down the line. Now, that could be a bad thing, that could be a good thing. It just depends on how you view the issue.
OK, Hadass Gold, thank you very much indeed for joining us here.
So that was the global view. And when we come back, we will zoom into Switzerland and chat with Roger Schawinski, media pioneer and author, about a book on the vote. And although he founded many private media companies in the past, he is against the No-Billag initiative. Stay with us and find out why.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria GPS.
Only from CNNMoney Switzerland.
What drives Swiss leaders? What is the secret to their success? In the Newsmaker, we speak to successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, politicians, decision makers, opinion leaders, sports and entertainment personalities. We find out what makes them tick in a special long-form interview that gets to the heart of who they are and where they are going. So pull up a chair and join us for the Newsmaker every weekday evening from 8 p.m. on CNN Money Switzerland.
Somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice.
Thank you.
You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. Well, we'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland. So welcome back to The Big Picture on CNN Money Switzerland, where we focus on the No-Billag vote on the 4th of March. Now, the Swiss will vote on changing their media system, or at least on the future financing of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, SBC, that's the largest media company in the country. Now, one of the most experienced media professionals in Switzerland is Roger Schawinski. He played an important role first at Swiss National TV, where he founded a consumer program in the 70s. Later, he became a pioneer in private radio and TV, founding Radio 24 and Telesuri. And today, he has a talk show on Swiss National TV. So basically, he knows both sides of the industry. He even wrote a book about the No-Billag vote and the political discussion in Switzerland surrounding it. My colleague, Hannah Wise, spoke to him earlier.
Of course, I always was fighting for a landscape where there is private and public radio and television, because we had a monopoly for a very long time, and I started the first private radio station and the first television station here in Zurich. And I realized that the SBC, Swiss Radio and Television, is important, but we need both sides. And I had a lot of problems with monopoly, but I never thought that we should abolish this big operation.
How personal is what's happening on this No-Billag argument for you? Because obviously you've had to come up against the regulations before, but then you're also benefiting from them in the public sector.
Well, I'm not really benefiting. I have 2 radio stations in Zurich. I never got any money from the government. I'm one of the only persons in Swiss media who didn't profit from these kind of funds. So I'm doing it for the country, because I really think it's right to have this. If I look back how Switzerland developed, how these public sectors have a role to play in all of Europe. And if Swiss public would, in one stroke, abolish everything, that would be terrible.
Why?
Because the market is too small. And I had a television station here in Zurich for the whole country, Tele 24, and I realized if I have only an income stream from commercials, it's not enough. Because with commercial in this small market, you just cannot really produce television program on high quality standard, you need a second income stream. And the income stream, which all the other stations have, is from government fees.
Who are the opponents here, then?
The opponents... you think those who want to change it?
Yes.
Yeah, libertarians. And I thought we're going to have a great ball and we go about it. And they were surprised that they really struck gold in a way, because there are a lot of people who don't like SBC because it's too big, it's too powerful. And they are against everything that the state offers. But civilization, as we know it here in Europe, depends on a lot of things that the states provide. And if you start to break them down and abolish them, then you're in big trouble. And so I had to really decide, do I make a stand? And I decided, yes, I have to do it, since I have this experience, and a longer experience, and experience from all sides, as you mentioned, more than anybody else. And that's why I wrote a book about it.
The Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, how surprised do you think they were by the momentum that this initiative got?
I don't really know what you mean, the price. What do you mean?
Surprised. How surprised?
How surprised? Well, the surprise is big. And in the beginning, the first surveys showed that this initiative has a big chance of getting through. And that's why a lot of people really panicked. And they didn't have, the public didn't have enough information, and the lack of information really helped the proponents of this proposal. And now we have more information in the market. A lot of newspapers have written articles about it. I've written a whole book about it. Television shows really discuss the pros and cons. And now people realize, and according to latest surveys, they won't win. It will be Swiss Broadcasting Corporation after March 4th.
Do you think people do have enough information now to make an informed decision when it comes
better than before? And of course, this discussion is going on because these people, when they are asked, the people who want to see this through, when they are asked what is coming afterwards, they say, I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, and this is terrible. I mean, just imagine how unresponsible this is, to break something apart, demolish something without knowing what will come next. And I think now people realize that it's really reckless what they're doing.
Well, if you did have a crystal ball, what would you see happening if there was no BILAG after March the 4th?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I have knowledge. I know that, of course, if the market leader, which is Swiss Broadcasting so far with 30%, who will win afterwards? Not number 10, which are the small Swiss private television stations. It's number 2, 3, and 4, the big German television station. We have in Switzerland 60% market share of a German television station, which is unheard of in other countries, which is not good. If you think we had 60% of foreign newspapers here, people would be excited and would say, this cannot go on. This has to change. And of course, if Swiss Broadcasting Corporation is not functioning anymore, then those big German private television stations, which already take away 300 million Swiss francs out of the country without really offering something special, because they're just broadcasting into this country without producing programs to Switzerland, they will profit.
But even if the status quo does continue and there is an SBC, it's not exactly a vote of confidence in the way things are currently run. And the SBC is going to have to wake up and change.
Well, yes, I think so, because we had a wake-up call in 2015 with the first vote about it, which SBC won very narrowly. Probably they will win again very narrowly, but maybe not a third time.
So how are they going to change? What can you see
it's not
happening?
only SBC, but the laws have to change. And I am helping now or talking to people. I have a proposal how this could change the laws, that SBC isn't getting 90% of all these kind of fees which are compulsory in Switzerland. Maybe there are other ways which are more amenable and more adaptable in this time we live.
So potentially there could be some kind of halfway house.
My idea,
fees,
yes,
potentially.
Yeah, my idea goes like this: 60% go fixed to Swiss Broadcasting Corporation. And the voters have a chance to decide where the other 40% go, which station they prefer. They could give 100% to Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, or they can give to some of their other stations they like, and then they feel they really get money for the things they like.
But this isn't a free market, though.
No, it's not a free market.
But is that not what people are saying that they want?
No, but there is no free market. If 60% of foreign television is watched in this country, that's not a free market. It is a market dominated by foreign television stations.
And don't you think that it just comes down to money? For people sitting at home saying, actually, I think 451 francs is just too much money. I don't want to pay that. And basically, it's I either pay that or I pay nothing and I vote for nothing.
Yes, that's a big argument.
People don't want to get involved in decisions, though, with your
That's
idea.
That's a big argument. It will be less than 450. It will be 365. 1 franc a day, starting in 2019. But, of course, that's a very strong argument. If you can vote about the taxes you pay, and this is basically a tax, then a lot of things won't go through. If we had to vote whether we want to pay 2,000 francs for our farmers in Switzerland, which we do through taxes, probably we wouldn't agree. So this is a very strong argument. And our system of direct democracy with referendums and initiatives is dangerous. And it can come out as a case of Russian roulette in the beginning. At the end, maybe 0.5% will decide one way or the other.
Let's go back to the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation. For many of our English-speaking viewers, this whole idea that they are given a certain amount of cash, a lot of cash, but how involved is the government in how the SBC spends that money?
Well, really not. And they don't have a say in the programs. I am having a show on Swiss television for 6.5 years. I do an interview, one-on-one, like you're doing now with me, and I never had anybody intercept. Never anybody telling me you should talk to this person, they shouldn't talk to the other person. So basically, the financial part is regulated by the government, but not the content or the way they spend money.
So the SBC has free rein on how it spends its money.
Well,
perhaps they should be more transparent, and then people may potentially be more understanding of why they need so much money and where it actually goes, and then they understand.
It's very difficult to convey what costs how much. I mean, television is very expensive, as you know. Radio is cheap. Television is a medium of money. Radio is a medium of person, of people. With a few people, you can do a great radio program. With a few people, you can't do a great television station. You need much more. And, well, according to the new law, which is being discussed right now, 50% of the money has to be invested in information programs, which is okay, I think.
Tell us about your history with Armin Walpen.
Oh, he was, a terrible history. He was my nemesis for so many years, and he tried to prevent...
So he was the accountant, basically. He was in charge of the money.
He was in charge of the SBC, but before, when I started my radio station on a high Italian mountain, 3,000-meter high Italian mountain in '79, he tried to prevent me from broadcasting. He did everything to secure and protect the monopoly in Switzerland. Later, he became general director of SBC. And at that time also, he tried everything to protect the monopoly. And he thought, if the monopoly is getting stronger and stronger, we are protected forever. And now we realize it's the opposite. Because the monopoly is so strong, a lot of people don't like it anymore. And that's why this initiative has so many supporters.
And is this why it's so personal for you?
No, it's not personal. I just told the story because a lot of people are surprised why this created such tension, this whole thing. And you have to know the story to understand what is happening right now. And that's why I wrote this book where I explained it.
How do you think this is going to play out then? I mean, well, first of all, have you seen people's attitudes towards the No-Billag argument change as we get closer to the voting date?
Yes, of course. In the beginning, they had a majority accepting this proposal, and now it has changed. This year, in January, it has changed, and now it looks that it will be defeated.
But why did it suddenly change so?
Because people are more informed. I heard people say, this and that person on television, oh, I hate him, that's why I'll vote yes. I mean, this is ridiculous. You cannot argue like this. If they really dig into the issues, and if they realize what they would lose, maybe then they realize they shouldn't vote yes, and this is happening.
You're obviously very emotional about this subject.
Yeah.
And is it the same for people?
I think so. Never before has initiative created such havoc in Switzerland for so many months. And it goes on now for 3 or 4 months already. And we are still 1 month away or a few weeks away from the voting day. So this is really special. And I called it, that's why I called it, because it's so radical. I call it the mother of all votes in Switzerland. And
is this our Brexit or our Trump vote?
Yes. Yes, exactly. In my last chapter, I said, exactly like Brexit. I said, we're going to change things, but we don't know what's going to happen next. And I say, if you don't know where you land, you shouldn't jump. The English did it, and I hope the Swiss don't do it, even if the subject is very different.
And a lot of people around the world will be watching Switzerland on this because, as a British person myself, we have the very same or very similar argument with the BBC.
Yeah.
And if Switzerland did vote for No-Billag, then it would be the first country in Europe to do that.
Yes, that is incomprehensible for a lot of people. And it would be totally un-Swiss to do something so radical. And that's why really a lot of foreign stations, especially a television station in Germany, are watching what is happening. I'm giving interview in Germany all the time and in Austria and now here on this great channel. So really, this could be groundbreaking. And I'm sure a lot of people from the ultra-right in Germany and in other countries are waiting for yes, in this case, to say, we want to do the same thing.
So this is the most divisive vote for Switzerland in history?
No, the most consequential, because we voted against the EU in '92, but it hasn't changed really much. We are still in cooperation with the EU, but this will change a lot of things. One of the pillars of democracy would fall, and nobody knows what would happen next.
But obviously, this wouldn't have an impact on the actual situation in Switzerland.
Yes,
it would break Switzerland up.
No. I don't go that far. But a lot of things. I mean, we have a lot of achievement from the days of enlightenment, which we have, public schools, public transportation, information of the people from all sides, and not only along commercial considerations, education, science, background information, big research projects. If this goes away, a lot of things are lost.
Roger Schawinski, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's it for the big picture tonight, but the Newsmaker is coming up, and I will see you shortly for more. Stay with us.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah.
Oh, Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, CNNMoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
And seeing Shanghai the old-fashioned way. CNN Business Traveler in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Are you ready for that? Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. Are you still a mileage geek? Yes, always. And bridging culture gaps. Don't ask. On the next CNN Business Traveler.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
His work is on a vast scale. It uses powerful lights and intricate technology to project a message or story onto the likes of buildings and landscapes. Tonight, our newsmaker light artist, Gary Hofstadter, lets us in on the detailed process behind his latest work to take the Swiss brand on a grand light tour of America and where he gets the inspiration for his work.
I'm doing these light art projections for art or business or marketing, environmental, state ceremonies, whatever. And I discovered quite fast that these projections are so environmental friendly. It's just light for an hour or two and you go. You even don't touch the building. So the point is getting the creativity and the great know-how about history, human being and our planet. You combine these things. Then you can alert or highlight a situation.
And there's a new deputy in town at the European Central Bank. Spanish Economics Minister Luis de Guindos will soon be the next vice president of the ECB. But does this signal a new direction, or will it be business as usual? Good evening, I am Ana Maria Montero, and you are watching The Newsmaker. It's great to have you. Time now for a look at those news-making headlines in Switzerland and around the world. Export figures for Switzerland are down compared to last month, due mainly to weaker pharmaceutical exports. However, watch exports are back in line with expectations, according to the Federation of the Swiss Watch Industry. Swiss watch exports were up by 12.5% in January compared to last year. China climbed into second place, overtaking the U.S., where export numbers have declined over the past 2 years. And Swiss consumers are buying more online. Figures reported on Tuesday show that e-commerce sales rose by 10% last year, taking it to a total of 8.6 billion francs. A key finding in the research presented by the Swiss Post and the Association of E-commerce Traders is that 1.6 billion francs were spent online receiving goods from abroad. That is a 23% increase from the year before. And Europe's largest bank, HSBC, saw increases in annual revenues and full-year profit, as well as a 140% rise in reported profit before tax, due in part to growth in Asia. Now, despite the positive numbers, the bank's yearly report card missed the mark, according to some analysts. The numbers were also overshadowed, given that HSBC said it could face penalties in excess of $1.5 billion, stemming from investigations into claims that its Swiss private bank helped clients evade paying taxes. It's a mixed send-off for outgoing CEO Stuart Gulliver, who is seen by most as instrumental in turning around the bank during his 7-year reign. He said in a statement that HSBC had moved on from the mistakes of the past. And the man assigned to oversee the Justice Department's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election is taking a closer look at U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Now, CNN has learned that questions are now being asked about Kushner's personal business dealings when he led a contact for foreign governments. Sources tell CNN that there is a specific interest in discussions Kushner had with potential Chinese and Qatari investors to secure money for one of his company's buildings facing financial troubles. It's not clear what's behind the sudden interest in the discussions. And Venezuela launched the pre-sale of a new commodity-backed digital currency called Petro on Tuesday. The launch of the so-called cryptocurrency comes as Venezuela faces deepening economic and political crises. According to the government, the Petro is backed by oil, gas, gold, and diamonds, and is meant to help overcome U.S. and EU sanctions. The opposition-controlled National Assembly in Venezuela has opposed the idea of the Petro, labeling it illegal. The U.S. also warned that buying the Petro could violate sanctions against Venezuela, which prohibit the purchase of newly issued Venezuelan debt. Now, they say every second counts. But at the Olympics, it's more like every 100th of a second. And nowhere was that more evident than in the men's two-man bobsled, as Canada and Germany finished in a dead heat for first place. So this means Canada's Justin Krieps and Alexander Kopacz and Germany's Francesco Friedrich and Thorsten Margus will all walk away with a gold medal. CNN's Christina McFarlane caught up with the Canadian duo about their remarkable Olympic moment.
I think it'll leave a mark on history, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really cool, you know, it's just to have a race that's that tight in the first place on such a technical track. You know, it's coming down to the 100th each run, and then, you know, to tie, it doesn't get much more exciting than that, and you get to have an extra two guys who are as excited as you are, because you all won, you became Olympic champions. And when I found out we tied, it was Thorsten Margus who was giving me a hug, and he said, "We did it. We won. We're Olympic champions. We tied." And I was like, "We tied? That's so crazy."
The work of the Swiss light artist GERRY Hofstadter could be described as ambitious, to say the very least. Using powerful lights and intricate technology, he sees opportunity in projecting images and messages that tell a story as well as educate. His latest project will see him incorporate U.S. landmarks with Swiss connections. In tonight's NewsMaker interview, we hear from the man who does not consider himself an artist, but who has a detailed job in bringing his ideas to life.
You make a test light. You take the grids, the measurements, you think, doesn't look good, here is a tree, let's integrate the tree, there is a water, we take the water into the show. It's some sort a floating creativity process with a clear goal at the end. And then you produce these pictures in a 24, 26-hour time frame after the test.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Ana Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that what I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Amanpour.
The Swiss Pulse delivers you the most important global and Swiss business and financial news, connecting Switzerland to the world. Tune in every weekday from 6 p.m. or find us on the go on our website or social media platforms.
Welcome back. You are watching The Newsmaker. When you think about an artist telling a story, it's possible that paintings and sculpture spring to mind. But imagine the same story told through the use of powerful lights, music, and carefully calibrated technology. Our newsmaker tonight is the renowned Swiss light artist GERRY Hofstadter, and he's certainly not afraid of doing things on a grand scale, projecting images and messages in a thought-provoking way onto buildings and landscapes. And now he's receiving acclaim for his latest creation, taking the Swiss brand on a grand tour of America, bringing communities and their history together and teaching them about Switzerland along the way. Amanda Kane spoke to him about the detail that goes into his work and how he first got the idea for taking his light installations across the pond.
There are more than 89,000 monuments in the USA, landmarks, national parks, monuments, buildings. So I went through all these monuments and selected one per state. So I ended up 50 monuments, and all these monuments had to do something with Switzerland. A direct or indirect link.
And what sort of links? Maybe give us an example.
A good example is Washington Crossing. George Washington crossed the Delaware River and beaten the British troops. So he used boats for that. That was the turning point for the democracy of the United States, to get independent and fighting for liberty, freedom, independence. In our country, in Switzerland, this was the link. Our liberator, William Tell, of course, a hero, a mystic history, somehow it happened. He also escaped from a boat, ran back, and shoot down the boss of the Austrian and made the start, the key point of the liberation of Switzerland. So that's the link.
So it's not just an elaborate light show here, Gary. I mean, you're really mixing art and history and monuments and the Swiss and US relationship. When it comes to the art that you're projecting onto the buildings, onto the monuments, I mean, what are you looking for? Is it famous artworks? Is it images? Is it purely lights? Tell us about that.
My work is projecting pictures, paintings, and messages onto monuments, landscapes, icebergs, or mountains, whatever. So first thing I learned about USA then the history of Switzerland. The connection between these two countries, which is represented through the monuments, or that monument. That means I then use, for instance, Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington. So using all the pictures and paintings and letters of George Washington and his life. And these pictures were then projected on the building with music in a sequence, 20 minutes. So I projected pictures when George Washington was on a boat as a young guy, as a trapper, pioneer, hunter, as he became a family man, a general, a president, and when he passed away at Mount Vernon.
So the images portray his life over his lifetime, and that's the show itself, a series of these...
On Mount Vernon, where he lived. So that means one third is about USA and States, and 1/3 is about Switzerland, and the main third is the actual history of the monument.
So it's not just lights and music, you really are telling a story, and a historical story at that.
Yeah.
So just tell us technically how this works, because it seems like a huge task to be able to project all these images neatly onto a building, and it really looks like the building or the monument's being painted by hand. It's that precise. So technically, how is this possible?
To end there at the result, let's start far, far away from this. It's the vision, the idea, the know-how, the equipment, the team, the financing. Then the monument itself, the permissions. We are in USA. It's a totally different game of liability, insurance, responsibilities. And then the permission from the monument itself, then getting together with them and show them the pictures I selected, and I tell them you can wish, you can have also your ideas. I integrate them in my show. It's a partnership at the end. And then you go there with your projectors, the electricity, the surrounding lights, don't touch the nature, environmental friendly, all these things. And then you make a test light. You take the grids, the measurements, you think, doesn't look good, here is a tree, let's integrate the tree, there is a water, we take the water into the show. It's some sort a floating creativity process with a clear goal at the end. And then you produce these pictures in a 24, 26-hour time frame after the test.
And you're literally driving from state to state in a huge truck with all the equipment inside. I mean, how many are you? What's the size of your team?
The team, we just came home. The team was 9 persons, a film team, 3 people, 2 photographers, an assistant light, an assistant technique, and myself. And we had Chevrolet SUVs, generators, and a truck. Wow. That's it.
And you're taking this tour across the States over a period of 2 years, I understand.
Yes.
And just tell us a little bit about the idea itself. I mean, where did this idea come from to have, you know, this grand light tour of the US with Switzerland behind it?
I'm doing these light art projections for art or business or marketing, environmental, state ceremonies, whatever. And I discovered quite fast that these projections are so environmental friendly. It's just light for an hour or 2 and you go. You even don't touch the building. So the point is getting the creativity and the great know-how about history, human being and our planet. You combine these things. Then you can alert or highlight a situation or a circumstance or a ceremony, what else? And by traveling around the world, meeting a lot of people, Indians, Bedouins, kings, presidents, a lot of people, you learn at the end, you discover at the end it's just human being. So I used my know-how and my different professions I have to combine in one tool in light art projections, light art communication. So I went to the Arctic and Antarctic to project on icebergs or in the desert, on monuments.
Now, the shows themselves in the US, I mean, how long typically are they? Who's invited? What sort of events are they?
Yeah. So having this light art and the messages, the monument communicated to their channels, hey, GERRY is coming from Switzerland, and showing us our monument in the spotlight with the history. And the main goal, the idea, you asked me about the idea, how it came up, the idea for the USA. I said, hey, Switzerland invented democracy, 1291. And the USA took it, 1776, and tuned it. And we took it back and tuned it again for Switzerland. But the biggest democracy is the United States. Everybody's looking to the USA and trying to copy. So why shouldn't all the other countries not having a democracy trying to copy that? So I said, the inventor of democracy goes to the big inventor of democracy, and we have so many common sense and roots, these two countries.
Tell me about this. I mean, what sort of commonalities do the US and Switzerland have?
Okay, both countries fighted off the foreign forces, okay? In both countries, you can say your opinion. Both countries are looking desperately for freedom, independence, and for peace. Both countries have states. We have cantons in Switzerland, and the United States have states. So there's a similar system, even in the government. So when you have a similar system like this, for sure you have similar things in history. So I went back to these monuments and discovered incredible things. Did you know the Wright brothers, they have 25% on their blood is Swiss. They invented flying. And I discovered this, and I discovered also a long time ago that 7 years after their first flight with a Wright flyer, the first motorized flight in Switzerland was in St. Moritz on a frozen lake with a Wright flyer. And linking this and using the Wright flyer monument in North Carolina for a beautiful, sensible light art performance is just perfect.
This was an incredible educational journey then. It wasn't just about...
That's the main goal.
It's not just about, you know, Swiss PR in the US.
No.
I mean,
for whom? I cannot do Swiss PR for Switzerland and USA.
But nonetheless, I mean, it strengthens the image of Switzerland in the US, would you say?
Yes. Our Liberator, our cantons, the states of the USA, the Swiss cross on an aircraft carrier, United States flag of an aircraft carrier, because there was a Navy lieutenant who drove this submarine to the deepest point of the Earth. But the inventor of this submarine was a Swiss. But the US Navy lieutenant had to drive it, you know? So that's the reason why we selected for South Carolina this USS Yorktown aircraft carrier.
You scratch deep enough, you always find the Swiss popping up.
A lot of connections, not only cheese and chocolate. And to summarize this, your question is, my goal was to bring to the USA a sign that all the people, especially in these times, we have bad times, people making stress in some parts of the world. We have hurricanes, we have wildfire, economy, but you have history and roots. And my tour through all this Light Art Grand Tour to all the states should highlight to the US people, educate your children, make them proud what you have in your country, what you achieved, and learn about your history. Because future is only based on history.
And through your work, though, Gary, do you expect that it could support and boost the economies of both countries?
I'm too small for that. No.
But nonetheless, it's a communications platform that's bringing people together, exchanges. I mean, surely businesses are invited to attend such events. I mean, is there anything to strengthen the economic link between the two countries?
Oh, that's a very good point, actually. At the moment, since 2-3 years, is a very strong business partnership between USA and Switzerland. And USA is ordering a lot of Swiss products at the moment, heavy. Some companies are having heavy jobs over there. But they have to fulfill to produce 63% in the USA. So they're buying factories, land, employing people. So these companies, they're already ahead of my idea. And I With the tour, I only would like to have the people highlighting their monument, the history, educating the children, and reflect again what they achieved.
And in the second part of our Newsmaker interview, we'll hear more about the ambitious work of GERRY Hofstadter and how the experience of his various careers have helped shape his ambitious art and who he is today. And of course, don't forget you can watch us live on YouTube or catch our not-to-be-missed content on CNNMoney.ch. Meanwhile, your weather is up next.
CNN Money Switzerland weather. We start with the webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now the map of Swiss warnings. Let's have a look to the forecast for this afternoon. And for tomorrow. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movement and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
Spotlight, CNN Money Switzerland's program dedicated to lifestyle, celebrity, entertainment and culture. We bring you a snapshot of the latest trends in Switzerland and around the world, from Hollywood to design, big names and rising stars, to art collectors and architects. It's right here under the spotlight.
Spotlight with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
You make sure you're feeling good. We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
The America First slogan has arguably come to define Donald Trump's presidential campaign, but it has also provided some of the impetus behind a giant art project by one of Switzerland's most prominent light artists. In the second part of our Newsmaker, Amanda Kane speaks to GERRY Hofstadter about the inspiration for his work and how life's experiences have helped him arrive at the point he is today.
We've had a bit of a history with the US in terms of banking secrecy and relations in that regard. I mean, do you think that there's, headway to be made in terms of, strengthening those ties again? Was that damaging, do you believe?
Okay. My first profession was banker, chief investment banker. And we had a lot of clients of America with bank accounts saying, I do not declare, they cross, I do not declare. And I discovered quite soon there might be sooner or later a problem. This is one thing, but there are also clients that said, I declare. It's up to you if you declare or not. So they just used the system of banking secrecy. So when this all came up, big history, there was time to sort it out because business should be treated between each country in a proper manner. But I guess all these things are done now. Smart people on the top, another generation coming in, digital information transferring, new laws. And I guess this situation was very, very good for the friendship of USA and Switzerland to be on eyes level again. Sometimes in a friendship it needs a little bit of a shake. And Switzerland and USA always went along together very, very closely.
And on a political front, I mean, the timing of your tour, has it anything to do with the Trump presidency? Why now?
No, the timing was, I wanted to do the tour 1 year before. And there were some monuments and partners, they're saying, hey, let's wait till we have a new president or a woman president. Just wait. Mm-hmm. So we waited, and then Mr. Trump became president. He's a businessman, actually. So I'm not politicians, I'm not taking care about this. I just realize he's guiding a little bit, as a businessman, his country, or trying to do it. That's okay. Everybody has his own style. But I believe the time was just perfect when we started, with all these issues around the USA and in the USA.
And through your work, GERRY, has it played a role, who the president is currently, in obtaining the rights, the permission? Has it made it easier, difficult? What would you say?
It played a role, I would say, in a sense of motivation. All the monuments we asked went in immediately. They just catch the ID. And there is a famous sentence out, let's make America first again. And these monuments realized, GERRY is right. We should reflect on our history, which made America first, probably once. I think America is still good again, or still good. So that helped a little bit, this sentence.
And how do you know when your work, when the show has been a success? What determines that?
There was a feedback, one-to-one, immediately after the show. People with tears in their eyes, shaking hands, saying to me, thank you very much that you came to our country to show us what we have, because we have forgotten. Hundreds of people shaking hands.
Or they didn't know, maybe.
Yeah, and I was so overwhelmed. In Switzerland, nobody's shaking you the hand. Hey, thank you that you're here, and showing us this beautiful castle in the spotlight. They just look nice. And over there is totally a different approach of gratefulness, of awareness, proudness about what they have. It was really, really a big, big experience for me, a deep experience.
And let's speak about you specifically, GERRY. I mean, what's your personal interest in such a journey, such a show?
I have a certain age. I have to say that done so many things in my life, different professions, all continents, different works. I met so many people, so it's the time to give back something. I just want to have fun in doing a job which makes sense for the planet.
You spoke earlier about educating children, making sure they know the history of their country. So do you believe in bringing it to life, bringing history to life in this way is the future of educating our children?
I guess in that tour, or in this Light Art Grand Tour I'm doing the next 2 years to all 50 states, one of the key part is that you have to know that the US government would like to have the education system, how you teach people, educate for professions, die Berufslehre, calls in German. Since 2 years, even the presidents are talking together about this, of these two countries. USA would like to have this system. So this system means also education. So a key part of the tour is the educational point. So through my presence as a Swiss in the USA, I hope I can motivate the government to fast take over the system, which we are having in Switzerland for training people on a profession. So the tour is actually an education system, but on another way.
And what do you believe is great about the Swiss education system that America could perhaps learn from?
Everybody knows it's the best if you want to learn a profession. That's really the best in the world. And having this in mind and doing this, I'm some sort of a motivator for the kids and for the mature people, because without education you have no future, even not a country.
Speaking of professions, you've had a couple. You've had a very varied, colourful background. But tell me about the work of do you call it a light painter or a light artist? I mean, how long have you been doing that and how did you get into that?
All right. In our regions, people need to define somebody what he's doing. A racer, a nurse, a pilot, an artist. Wir. This came out of the 1500 from Italy. A good furniture maker was an artisanal artist. So he's an artist. He's good painting, or he's good with his hand, he's an artist. But with the Inuits in Greenland, nobody knows that world. When the grandfather is doing very good design with this on stone or painting the, how you call from the polar bears?
Engraving?
Yeah, engravings or cuttings.
Yeah.
Nobody calls him an artist. It's a word from us developed to categorize somebody. So I'm not an artist. I'm Gary, and I'm doing what I like to do and what I feel I have to do.
But you have some technical background in how to make this happen.
No, I was a helicopter pilot, a banker, I made Economist, a Swiss banking school. I have a degree in marketing. I grew up on a farm, horse riding, diving, mountain climbing, special force. I even trained Navy SEALs and Marines on combat search and rescue in high mountain enemy areas.
So do you think it's important for the next generations to not just be one thing, like the artist or the nurse that you mentioned,
Correct.
but to have multiple skills and professions throughout their life?
Yeah, you know why? I believe it's very important because with our smartphones and this digital world, you get from all other people the message, look what I'm doing, what I can, where I am, where I spend my holidays, what I'm having for dinner. And you have only one profession, and you have this variety in front of you. Not good. So try in your life most as you can different things in sport, in food, in professions. Just try. Go singing, dancing, make something. Then you can talk. Then you can experience. Then you know what's in you.
There's a common theme with what you're doing at the moment. I mean, with the light shows, be it in the US and other countries, I mean, you're always trying to bring out the Swiss element. Is that correct? Is that your common...
No.
Not necessarily?
No, not necessary. USA and Switzerland is so interconnected in democracy.
That was clear to you?
out of question. And even the concept I would like to have from the education for professions.
But Gary, with your other projects, other countries that you work with, are you always trying to bring out the Swiss element? Is that your common theme?
Not necessarily. I'm really floating what I feel. But from Switzerland, a neutral country, I can tell you, I'm everywhere welcomed. That's what I discovered. Point one. Point two, if people are saying you're an artist and you behave yourself like would like to be artist, that's not real art. As an artist, you step back, far away back, and you bring the other people, the culture, the monument in the spotlight. So my ultimate dream of what I'm doing or what I can do and the power I have to do is training Inuit people, taking the paintings from old Chinese women up in the mountains and training Inuit people to paint my glass plates and project Chinese culture art, 5,000 years old, on the icebergs of the Inuits. Then taking the Chinese woman up in the mountains and training them to paint my glass plates for the projections with the Inuit thing and project them in the Chinese mountains. Chinese art and the Inuit art. I go to the Aboriginals, train them painting my glass plates with their design they have on the bodies, the tattoos, and project this on the Ayers Rock. At the same time, I take the paintings from the Inuit on the Ayers Rock and the paintings from the Chinese ladies on the Ayers Rock. And I tell them there are other cultures, 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, 10,000 years old, in art. On their monuments, this transfusion. So I bring them my art, they can do it on their own, on their monuments. Can you imagine what kind of pictures you will see in front of you?
So in a way you are illuminating or you're giving a window of opportunity to what would be otherwise forgotten art, forgotten cultures, or maybe not even forgotten, maybe even things that were never ever known to the world, that you are putting out there as a great big light show, somehow putting a spotlight onto
their monument.
To their monument with their...
In New Zealand, on the Geysers, on the Ice Rock, Australia, on the steam in Iceland. It depends.
And maybe the sky's the limit, always connecting the dots, connecting the cultures through the artwork and through the monument and the history.
Correct.
So what personally motivates you? What drives you? What inspires you?
I have seen all. So now it's unlimited in front of me.
And does it always have to make sense to you, what you do in life?
Oh, that's a good point. I do not make things, they don't make sense. They have to make sense today, tomorrow, or in 20 years. That's how I think. And if you do something, you think it makes sense, or it will make sense, it doesn't make sense at the end. Life will tell you somehow at the end, it makes sense what you make.
So it's never about financial gain, it's always a project with a meaning.
Yeah. Financial is just oxygen to do it. That's it. That's a business world.
And what's the next thing for you, Gary? Have you got anything lined up in terms of your projects?
A heavy one. We tried several times, but we had to cancel it and postpone. There is the Kilimanjaro, 24,000 feet. And I would like, there's so less oxygen on top there, I would like to carry up a little projector, 120 pounds up there, a generator, and then projecting on the melting glacier on the top, pictures, photos of refugees, and bringing them back to the valley and sending them out with the message there are more refugees due to climate changes than war.
So So you're using your work to project to the world, actually, what's happening.
Yeah, I'm just highlighting an issue or something which is happy or something people should be more aware of it. What you do with that pictures you see, it's up to you.
But nonetheless, it's a moving image that hopefully would move people to do something.
Hopefully to do something. First point, to think about something. And secondly, to do something.
The European Central Bank is getting a new deputy. Spain's economy minister, Luis de Guindos, will soon be the next vice president. This after his rival from Ireland dropped out of the race Monday. This is not the only shift to the ECB. The majority of the ECB's executive board will be replaced by 2019, opening up the possibility of a change in ECB policy. Earlier in the Swiss Pulse, we talked to RICARDO GARCIA, CIO and chief economist for the Eurozone at UBS, about the major changes at the top of the ECB and the possibility that the head will become German.
Yes, there's an 8-year cycle at the ECB, and by coincidence, 4 of the 7 seats will be vacated, as you said, by next year, which obviously opens up the spectre of a change in the stance of central bank policy.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but we know who second place is, but who's going to nab that top spot at the European Central Bank?
Yeah, we've seen yesterday that Germany supported the candidacy of Spain's de Guindos, and we think that next year Spain will return the favour to Germany. The two countries boast 38% of the Eurozone's population, which is enough for a blocking minority in the European Council next year. So it will be very hard to come by a German candidate, and it is no secret that Germany, after never having held any of the top 2 posts at the ECB, is very keen this time to get its turn.
And maybe you can just talk about how significant these changes, be it the German candidate or not, how significant are these changes when it comes to policy, which you mentioned earlier on?
Yeah, we think that de Guindos as well as Weidmann are two conservative policymakers, which would lead to a hockey shift in the policy stance. When we look back at what Weidmann has said so far, he has said that market expectations about the start of the interest rate hike cycle next year in the summer are about right, but we think the difference will be in the speed of the adjustment, which means that this would yield additional support to the euro, for example, with this also to Eurozone bond yields, and with this also to the Eurozone banking sector.
And in the broad economy, I mean, what does that mean for the individual person?
Yeah. I mean, the broader economy right now is doing very well. We are growing well above trend, which is very supportive for European assets, in particular the Eurozone. Nonetheless, obviously, higher macro factors like the euro, interest rates, obviously are negative for the economy. We have built this already into our numbers. We have 2.4% growth for this year, which is very strong for Eurozone standards. Nonetheless, we think that we will hardly see the same growth rates in the years to come. So somewhat a bit lower growth, around 2%, which is still very good, but we should be already over the top with this outlook.
And let's say, you know, policy changes are made, given new people at the top. How good are the markets at pricing that in earlier on? Or do you think there will be a sort of an impact there?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen some change in the market pricing in bond markets. But we think that, given that it is not official, obviously, I mean, the process not really started for the presidency for the ECB, that the market will still have to adapt. So we think that, as I said before, it will lend additional support for Eurozone bond yields, for example, Bund in Germany, but also to the euro. And that's why we have a bullish forecast on the euro. We have a 130 forecast against the US dollar in 12 months. And further out, there could be even more upside if, as I said, the ECB will indeed hike interest rates faster.
Irrespective of any changes at the ECB, a healthy outlook for the Eurozone. Now, tell me, in Switzerland, we're seeing lower exports to Europe.
Yes.
I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, we have looked into that. If you look at the regional split-up, you indeed see some weakness in the exports to Europe. At the same time, though, if you dig a little bit deeper, you can see also that exports into Latin America and the US have also been weaker in January. So it's not confined to Europe. With this, we think that it's like an aberration, statistical noise. Looking at the survey data, because we don't have any hard data for exports yet in January for the Eurozone, there is some conflicting signals among surveys. So it is something that we have to watch. Tomorrow we will get the purchasing manager indices. If we get a confirmation again that export orders have been a bit weaker in January, then probably something is going on, but this is not our expectation. So with this, we stay with our base case that this is an aberration and that the strength of the economy will continue also in the first quarter.
So really, this is just a knock-on effect from what we've seen coming from the United States, that...
Yes. I mean, you can have, from month to month, you can have aberrations because orders are placed in a specific month, or between reporting quarters for companies, public companies. You get this from time to time. But if you look at the volatility of Swiss exports in the recent years, this is still within the normal range of moves from one month to the other.
And also a time lag, I guess, with these numbers.
Yes,
it's not
also,
true
yes.
from right now.
Yeah.
So nothing to panic about there for the moment.
We are bullish on the Eurozone economy. Yeah.
And when we talk about politics, changes in the German coalition, anything that you're expecting
Yes.
there?
I mean, we have a very important date. On 4th of March, the SPD membership is voting on the Grand Coalition Agreement. Our baseline is that it will be accepted, so everything goes according to plan. Nonetheless, we have to watch a risk case where the SPD membership rejects the agreement. If that happens, we think that the end of Merkel's era will be accelerated. We have seen yesterday that Angela Merkel has promoted Annegret Kramp to the number 2 position in case it will be needed to find a successor for her. And this again would change the equation, right? So we would go potentially into repeat elections. The ECB question would change again because the vote from Germany is held by the Chancellor. So if you have a different person, the person might have different preferences. And that could affect then the question of Jens Weidmann. But as I said, our base case is that the SPD will vote in favor of the Grand Coalition Agreement. And with this, Merkel will support Jens Weidmann candidacy next year, which should be hawkish for the ECB.
And does losing Merkel make you at UBS nervous at all?
Well, it would obviously be a change. The news will come out in terms of the Grand Coalition Agreement on the same day as the Italian elections. So our base case is a benign outcome also there, but you could have like a worst case where a market unfriendly outcome would hit the markets on the day after from both Italy and Germany. And obviously that would be an unexpected event which would weigh on asset prices in the week after. That's clear, no? But our assumption is that Italy will be able to form a centrist Grand Coalition, and that the Grand Coalition in Germany would take form, that the government will be operational by Easter. So positive, but nonetheless, it's clear a risk that we have to watch, right?
But generally, it sounds like you're pretty positive for the next weeks and months for Europe.
Yes, we are above consensus for the Eurozone. That's why I have also risk-on stance at UBS in the Chief Investment Office. We have a global overweight on equities, for example. And we think that the last 12 months have shown that if politics don't get totally out of control, that the market looks through it and looks at fundamentals. And fundamentals are very strong. We have, for example, revised upwards our growth forecasts for the Eurozone in the last couple of weeks, as I said, to 2.4%, which is above consensus. I think this will ultimately shine through in asset price, for example, equities this year.
Good to have some optimism on the show. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
When considering a new job, what's the first thing you think about? Probably money, right? Well, according to a new survey, many workers say the perfect job isn't all about the cash. CNN's Mary Maloney explains in Consumer Watch.
Looking for a new gig? You're not alone. According to recruitment firm Selby Jennings, 75% of experienced professionals surveyed expect their next job to be at a different company.
People do have more choices than they've ever had. Unemployment's at historic lows. The access to information about different opportunities more widely available than ever. And there is a true war for talent out there for the absolute best people.
The majority of those surveyed say they will look at the whole package before accepting a new job, and not just the cash.
Money isn't everything. Things like culture, things like environment, diversity, inclusion, all of these factors play much higher importance than ever before, and much higher importance on why people actually stay with a firm or choose to go.
It's never too late to consider a job change.
There are lots of different ways to change your career trajectory in this day and age, so be open to new options out there and be readily available to take a look at them.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Mary Maloney.
And on that note, we have reached the end of the Newsmaker tonight and the Swiss Pulse. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. with everything you need to know about markets. So we expect you. See you then.
CNN Money Switzerland Business Weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
News programmes are usually full of short stories that hardly go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture. Every weekday evening at 7 p.m, the big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests who take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The big picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah.
Oh, Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
Somebody to to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice. You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why. I just want to press you on one further point. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
I'm Patrick Upman in Havana, Cuba. This is CNN.
It's 9 a.m. here in New York. I'm Maggie Lake. Coming up this hour, turning outrage into action. Survivors of Florida's school massacre get ready to march on Washington as they demand Donald Trump gets tough on gun control. Trade tensions. China warns the U.S. president that it will act if he imposes heavy tariffs on metal imports. And pouncing on the box office, Marvel's Black Panther smashes records in a watershed moment for Hollywood. Let's begin with a check of the markets. U.S. taking a break for President's Day holiday. Markets are closed there, and markets in China and Hong Kong also closed for the Lunar New Year. This is the picture in Europe and Asia. Pacific markets where traders are hard at work, although you can see not a whole lot going on. It was a relatively strong day for Japan, but that enthusiasm hasn't carried over to Europe. We'll keep an eye on things and bring you a fuller picture around 30 minutes from now. To the tragedy still dominating headlines here in the U.S., the massacre at a high school in Florida. As we speak, marches are being planned across the country to call for tougher gun control. And there's outrage over a tweet from Donald Trump. He suggests the FBI was too distracted by the Russia probe to follow leads that might have prevented the shooting. Rosa Flores is in Parkland, Florida, with more.
How dare you? Children are dying and their blood is on your hands because of that. Please. Take action.
Survivors of last week's high school massacre criticizing President Trump for his inaction on gun control and voicing their outrage over the president's tweet blaming the FBI for missed signals about the killer because of the Russia investigation. One student tweeting, 17 of my classmates are gone, but you're right. It always has to be about you. How silly of me to forget. Hashtag never again. Another writing, you are the president of the United States and you have the audacity to put this on Russia as an excuse? I guess I should expect that from you. The FBI admitted Friday that it failed to act on a specific tip it received on January 5th, when a person close to the killer told the Bureau he was erratic, owned guns, had a desire to kill people, and was potentially capable of conducting a school shooting.
On behalf of myself and over 1,000 employees of the Miami field office, we truly regret any additional pain that this has caused.
The Parkland community laying their loved ones to rest, emotions running high, many students turning their grief into calls for action.
Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats funded by the NRA telling us nothing could have ever been done to prevent this. We call BS.
The backlash comes as CNN also learns that an investigation from Florida's Department of Children and Families raised behavioral concerns about the killer in September of 2016, including that he was on Snapchat, cutting both of his arms, had a Nazi symbol drawn on his backpack, and wanted to purchase a gun for unknown reasons. According to the report, the killer had been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and depression, and investigators questioned how frequently he was taking his medication, but a safety assessment ultimately determined the level of risk was low. These documents also show that the killer was cited in over 40 disciplinary incidents at school, including fighting, profane language, assault, disruption, and suspension, with many school officials advising further counseling and threat assessment referrals. This new chilling surveillance video captures the confessed killer walking calmly down the street minutes after the attack. The family that took in the killer telling the Sun Sentinel, "We had this monster living under our roof and we didn't know. Everything everybody seems to know, we didn't know." The Sneeds say he followed every house rule but was depressed and took him to a therapist just 5 days before the shooting. They allowed him to keep firearms, including an AR-15 in the family's locked safe, but they thought they had the only key.
Let's get more from two of the students you just heard in Rosa's report, Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg. They spoke to my colleague Allison Camerano in the past couple of hours, and their message to President Trump is loud and clear.
The FBI are some of the hardest working individuals I've ever seen in my life. They work every day, 24/7, to ensure the lives of every single American in this country. And it's wrong that the president is blaming them for this. After all, he is in charge of the FBI. He can't put that off on them. He is in charge of them. And these people, what they love to do is push this off on the bureaucracy and say it's not them. He is in charge of the FBI. That's one of the executive branches. The executive branch is supposed to enforce laws, and as such, President Trump is in charge of that and the FBI.
And I do want to reiterate that the FBI were some of the amazing first responders who were helping us get to safety, and the fact that he wants to discredit them in any way and that he's trying to shift our focus onto them is it's not acceptable.
I appreciate that reminder that they're the first responders and that they go into these dangerous situations to try to save people. So the president says that he's going to hold a listening session with students on Wednesday. Have either of you been invited?
I believe we've been invited, but neither of us are going. We had a preset town hall meeting that we will be attending.
It's on CNN with Jake Tapper.
So you have to be
attending the listening session.
So you've already committed to that, so you'll be doing that.
From the beginning, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, tell me what's going to happen on March 24th with your plan for a big march on Washington. What's your vision?
My vision is pink hats from space. You know, like this is going to be enormous, and I really hope that we can I know that the word has spread wide and far, but I hope that we can even spread it even farther by that point, because I know that that's going to be indescribable, but in such a positive way.
And we have to. We just can't stop, because these special interest groups are never going to. And if we don't stop and we make our voices heard as an American public together, if we make our voices heard as an American public together, we're going to have to do that if we ever want to overcome this terrible tragedy.
So what do you say to the NRA?
Disband, dismantle.
And don't make another organization.
Yeah, don't make another organization under a different name. Don't you dare come back here. The fact that you were in power for so long and that you had so much influence for so long in America just goes to show how much time and effort we still need to spend on fixing our country.
Dan Merica joins us from West Palm Beach, Florida. Dan, there's a lot to cover. I want to start with these students from Parkland, though. You know, the president has blamed the FBI. He's blamed the Democrats in tweets over the weekend. But these students are steadfast. They are not letting him off the hook. They are directly calling on the president to act. And they plan to march on Washington. How do you think how is this being received in the White House? I mean, do you think this is changing the thinking of them at all? How is this impacting what they're talking about?
It's certainly something that they are seeing regularly. President Trump has been behind closed doors at his Mar-a-Lago estate for a couple days now, and as we have well known, we've reported before, he enjoys watching TV often, and these kids' stories are very eloquent, they're very well spoken, and they have laid out what they want pretty clearly. As you just heard there, they want the NRA to disband. Now, there's no indication that that's ever going to happen, certainly in the immediate future, but this could change minds in the White House, and what we actually can report now is a statement from the White House saying that President Trump is open to securing certain background check protocols, making them tougher. This is something that was proposed by a Democrat and Republican in the Senate. A statement out just from the White House saying that the president backs that. But I'd like to note that President Trump has really been all over the map on guns. You know, as a private citizen, in an early 2000 book, he wrote that he was in favor of assault weapons ban. He was in favor of a longer waiting period to buy guns. He backed off of that during the 2016 campaign, walked that back and said that he no longer believes that. He certainly ran as a pro-gun candidate, spoke at the NRA during the election, and really his only action on guns as president has been to make it easier for people with certain mental illnesses to buy weapons. So these students are speaking out. They're speaking directly to the numerous cameras in Parkland, and their stories are getting out there. President Trump is certainly hearing those stories, and it'll be interesting to see whether this statement that we got from the White House is actually followed through. And if it is, it's in large measure because of what these students have said on TV and how emotional and really heroic their stories have been.
That's right, and I asked that because, you know, the president and the White House, I mean, when politics are at play, both sides have a tendency to attack each other, blame each other. Very hard to attack this group of students after what they've been through and how sort of, you know, sincere they seem. We've seen this play over and over again. A lot of people are frustrated. They've given up hope, but this is different. It's different to have them leading the charge, and it's a lot harder for politics to run its usual course, you know, in the face of these young people who are galvanizing all of their peers. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out in Washington. I mentioned the president has a tendency to blame, you know, his adversaries. In a tweet storm over the weekend, he hasn't said a thing about the children, but he has blamed pretty much everybody else and just gone on a rant, which once again seemed to be raising questions about his mindset and his temperament.
Yeah. I mean, you have this collision of news stories right now. You have the shooting in Parkland, Florida. You also have the Mueller indictments, which you guys have covered, that laid out in intricate detail how involved this Russian campaign, misinformation campaign during the 2016 election actually was. And President Trump over the weekend has sent well over a dozen tweets, and really he's blaming everyone except himself. He's certainly not blaming Russia. None of the tweets get at what he's going to do to respond to the indictment, what the details in the indictment. He hasn't laid out how he's going to punish Russia for these actions. He certainly hasn't imposed the sanctions that Congress wants him to impose. And when asked about Russian President Vladimir Putin, obviously you remember in Vietnam when he was there, he said that he believes that Putin is sincere when he denies the meddling. So really, President Trump has this moment. He had a moment in Parkland. He had a moment to respond to the indictment. And what he has done instead is made it all about himself. He's tweeted about everything from blaming the Obama administration. He attacked a sitting member of Congress and said that he's a leaking monster. He's even gone after Oprah, who had a 60 Minutes piece last night that the president apparently watched. So all of this has come at the time where he could have stepped up. He could have said certain things about these students' stories that you're hearing on TV. Instead, he's made this all about himself, and that's certainly something, a trend we have seen over his first year as president.
And attacked his own security advisors, McMaster's, and the like. Listen, there's always time to self-correct, clearly, but we know that the Russia probe in particular really infuriates this president. While this is all happening, Dan, and I said we have a lot to cover, we do, against this backdrop of these sort of stories that are really, there is this package of trade tariffs sitting on the president's desk. A lot of business leaders I talk to very concerned about the threat of a trade war. You know, do we know when they're going to make a decision on that? And, you know, this is a president that when things are not going his way has a tendency to create diversion elsewhere or, you know, take on other things. The economy is one place he's been doing well on. It speaks to his base. Do we see them move up the timeline on that because of all the negative stories elsewhere that they don't like?
It's hard to see that. I mean, he has until April to make a decision on this trade package, these sanctions or these tariffs, raising the tariffs on certain products, steel and otherwise. He has until April. it's a push and pull we've seen during the president's first year in office. He's touted the economy, he's touted economic news. It's certainly been one of his greatest achievements in this first year. But he has also taken steps that, as you mentioned rightly, worry business leaders. So it's how much does he want to threaten the good news that he has received to make good on promises that he made during the 2016 election. Certainly people at the time during the election said that it's going to be very difficult for him to keep those promises, and that's what we're seeing now. Is he going to fulfill those promises, or is it just going to be more of just talking points that he was going to crack down on trade with certain countries? That remains to be seen. He has until April to make that decision. I find it hard to believe that he will throw this out there as something to distract from a certain story. He's certainly done it in the past, but this is a serious decision he has to make through his Commerce Department. It's hard to believe that would be used as a distraction at this point, but you know, anything can happen in the Trump administration. Yeah.
It is. Dan, what are our expectations for Wednesday? The White House has said he's going to have a listening session with some of the students. It's a difficult thing for any president, for anyone to have to navigate. You know, this is a community that's been so traumatized. What are we expecting? Is it going to be off camera? Is it happening in D.C.? Is he going to Parkland? What's that going to look like?
We don't have many details, to be completely honest with you. It remains to be seen who will actually be in the room, who has been invited. Certainly stands to reason that people in Parkland would be invited to something like this to talk about the issues that they have made clear on TV. It's a moment for the president to embrace the role of comforter-in-chief, but even go further than that and address issues that he would like to tackle. This statement that the White House put out about strengthening background checks, that's a step in the direction that many of those students would like to see done. Obviously, they would like to see a lot more done. But if he can, in this event, actually tackle some of those issues and move from just being a comforter-in-chief, really a cheerleader. When we saw him in Parkland on Friday, he touted what the first responders did. He went to the hospital and met with some of the victims and the doctors who helped those victims, saved lives. And he really touted all of their efforts. You didn't hear much from him in the way of policy. I think that on Wednesday, that's going to be something he has to address at this event, because that's what people who are there, if they invite people who are certainly from Parkland, that's what people there are going to be expecting for sure.
Yeah, and not to be lost in all this, there's a real opportunity here as well in this moment in time to create not only change but a legacy. If handled, you know, so we'll see what happens. It's going to be an important day. Dan, thanks so much. Dan Merica covering all the angles for us. Thanks so much. And you can join us for a special CNN town hall with students, parents, and others impacted by the Florida school shooting. Stand Up, the students of Stoneman Douglas Demand Action, airs live on Thursday at 10 in the morning Hong Kong time, 9 p.m. on Wednesday in New York. Well, for its part, the Kremlin says there's no substantial evidence Russia was involved in any meddling, but stories coming from within the so-called troll factory paint a very different picture. CNN's Matthew Chance joins us live from the trolling hub in St. Petersburg. Actually, we don't have Matthew at the moment. We'll see if we can get back to him with that. We'll be right back with more news just ahead.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
Well, for its part, the Kremlin says, as we just mentioned, there's no substantial evidence Russia was involved in any meddling, but not clearly the case outside the so-called troll factory. CNN's Matthew Chance does join us now. We've got him back from St. Petersburg. And Matthew, what do we know? What are we hearing from inside? And are people actually talking, frankly, about what goes on there?
Yeah, sorry about that technical error there. I think we may have been hacked or something like that, which wouldn't be surprising because we're standing outside now the building in St. Petersburg on the outskirts of the city, which has been identified in that US indictment as being the place from which all this hacking, all these internet trolls, these pro-Kremlin internet provocateurs are based or were based to try and really intervene in the US political system. And actually, much of the nefarious work that has been identified in that US indictments took place inside that building behind me. This is the only glimpse we have of a Russian troll factory in action. The undercover video was recorded inside the secretive Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, where paid internet provocateurs worked 12-hour shifts, distorting the US political debate. CNN spoke to a Russian journalist who went undercover there as an internet troll in 2016.
The US elections are the key issue for the Kremlin, and of course Russia has invested a lot of effort into them. That's why the troll factories are working, I have no doubt.
And this is the publicity-shy Russian oligarch now indicted in the US for bankrolling the troll factory. Yevgeny Prigozhin, dubbed by Russian media as Putin's chef, has lucrative catering contracts with the Kremlin, but denies any involvement in election meddling. Americans are very impressionable people, he told Russian state media. They see what they want to see. I have great respect for them. I'm not at all upset that I'm on this list. If they want to see the devil, let them see one, he added. But the possible extent of Prigozhin's alleged involvement in the often shadowy world of Russian foreign policy is only now starting to emerge. He's already under US sanctions for supporting Russian forces in Ukraine. And now, through a complex web of relationships, he's suspected of links to covert Russian mercenaries deployed in Syria, where CNN has reported several were killed in a recent US airstrike. Prigozhin denies any connection to the group. Whatever the truth, Putin's chef and his network of secretive companies seem to extend far beyond the kitchen. Well, apart from the rejection and the denial there from Yevgeny Prigozhin, there's also been a first reaction from the Kremlin to the US indictments about the alleged meddling. They're saying they see no substantial evidence that anyone in the Russian state actually took part. Back to you, Maggie.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Matthew. Tensions also on the rise when it comes to U.S.-China relations. China's warning that it will take action if the United States puts heavy tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. President Trump is considering imposing new trade measures in the name of national security, but China says it's determined to defend its rights. CNN's Matt Rivers reports.
So if tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from China to the U.S. are in fact enacted, how will China respond? That's the big question many here in China are asking after the latest news out of the White House. U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross made his suggestions in three basic options. Number one, impose across-the-board tariffs on steel and aluminum from all countries. Two, select targeted countries with even higher tariffs. Or three, limit the total steel and aluminum coming into the United States overall. All three of those would have major effects on Chinese imports and perhaps signal that the Trump administration is in fact more willing to actually carry out tougher trade measures in policy, more like the kind of rhetoric we heard from then-candidate Trump on the 2016 campaign trail, where he regularly accused China of stealing U.S. jobs while not playing by international rules. Now, the president has largely shied away from challenging Beijing economically since taking office. So far, not much of a response from China because we are smack dab in the middle of the Chinese New Year holiday, so government offices have been closed and will remain so for a few days now. We did see a brief article from state media outlet Xinhua, though. They quoted a senior official named Wang Hejun at the Commerce Ministry here saying, quote, "If the United States' final decision affects China's interests, we will take necessary measures to defend our rights." Nothing more specific than that, though. It is worth noting that there is wide agreement among economists that China has sold steel at unfairly low prices in the U.S. for years because of cheap production costs here domestically, and hundreds of U.S. sanctions have helped reduce Chinese steel imports already. China is now no longer among the top 10 steel importers to the United States. Now, the president has until mid-April to decide what kind of action to take in regards to potential tariffs, if any action at all. But if he does decide to act, you can absolutely expect China to respond. Analysts and industry representatives that we've spoken to here in China over the last several months or so say there is broad concern that Beijing will target major U.S. industries and companies that rely on access to Chinese markets. Think Boeing and their airplanes, or the soybean industry that exports billions of dollars of product to China each year. Restricting access to Chinese customers could seriously hurt U.S. companies in the short and long term. And finally, keep in mind what triggered these potential tariffs in the first place. The Trump administration launched the investigation saying that aluminum and steel imports from other countries might be hurting national security. If the U.S.